for you guys, right? Some high-level events that are catered to you guys. Again, congratulations for being in this group. Your hard work is clearly paying off. From a personal note, this is a little personal for me. For those of y'all that I know I wrote it in the email. Tim Beverlin is my MAPS leadership coach. He asked, he was going to be in town and asked if we'd like to do something here, and we clearly jumped on it. So that's why he is here. Uh-oh, we do hear some feedback. He is a MAPS leadership coach. He is also head of MAPS technology. It's funny that he says whatever that means, but it is kind of a big deal. He does coach all of the MAPS technology coaches. So like y'all know, I get to kill two birds with one stone, so it's pretty awesome. But anyway, I'd rather have him talk about himself than me talk about himself. So Tim, you can go ahead and take it away. Appreciate you being here.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for having me. I have a mic.
Well,
here,
you don't
so
need this, you got a mic.
All right, cool, thank you for the introduction. So a couple things, I don't enjoy the introduction part, I'm just gonna be honest. I'm glad Nimesh kept it short, so thank you. You'll learn about me a little bit as we go through this. First thing, I'm from Philadelphia. I talk fast, and I know we're recording this, and I'll do my best to keep the swearing to a minimum. Is that okay? What's the charge here if you swear from? You can swear, it's okay, don't worry. All right, great. I'll make a donation. All right, great, I'll make a donation. All good, and in all seriousness, I'll keep it as clean as I possibly can, but sometimes Philadelphia just kind of slips on out. So a little bit about me. I got out of college in 2004 and got right into real estate. It's the only real job I've ever had. Some like to say that I'm not really good at anything else. So it's the only job I had. I got into real estate, I drove by a sign and it said, call this number, get your real estate license. 30 days later, I had a license. And it was that fast. I went to school, I went to college about 3 hours west of Philadelphia. Didn't know anybody there, went to school, came home, lived there for a short period of time in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where my parents moved while I went to college. I thought that was a sign. If your parents move when you go to college, what are they trying to tell you? Like, I didn't have a bedroom when I came back, so I packed up and moved to Philadelphia. Didn't know a single person in the city and started selling real estate. I was 23. Joined some clubs, joined some soccer clubs, played in some other things and some other sports, met some people, and started building a real estate business. I was a Coldwell banker at the time. Is everybody here from KW? It's okay if you're not. I would say welcome to a 3-hour recruiting session. If not, totally kidding. You'll find I'm sarcastic, shocking, and you're gonna find some other things along the way. So pack up and move to Philadelphia at 23, didn't know anybody, got to know people, started selling real estate. A couple years later, I transitioned from Coldwell Banker to a company called Long & Foster, which is a regional brand in the northeast of Pennsylvania. It was recently acquired by Berkshire Hathaway. Stayed there for a couple years, and for 3 years in a row, Keller Williams was recruiting me as an agent. Like, do they not let this go? And they invited me to go to Mega Camp. How many of you have been to Mega Camp? Okay, they took me to Austin. I had no idea which way was up. I got in a flight, I got in a plane, I got off the plane, some young lady met me and she said, hey, get in this cab, they're gonna take you to your condo where you're staying. I thought, cool, I've never been to Austin before. This is gonna be fun. The condo pulled down 6th Street and stopped. How many of you have been to Austin? Okay, I didn't know that 6th Street was dirty 6th Street at the time, and there was a line to get into my condo, and I thought, this is unusual. I've never had to wait in line to get in a place I'm sleeping. It's 9 o'clock at night, and my room's above a bar. The base was going until whatever hour it was going, and everyone had told me, hey, get to the convention center early, it gets busy. So I roll up to the convention center at 7 a.m., and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. Like, this thing isn't opening. What am I doing? Did I make a mistake showing up here? And then I got to hear from Gary for 2.5, 3 days and top agents, and I couldn't undo what happened to me there. 2 months later, I joined Keller Williams. The 7 agents that were below me in production decided to join as well. I was fortunate enough to be the #1 agent at the time when I left. 2 weeks after I got there, so it's right around Christmas. Actually, I joined on my 30th birthday, ironically enough. Like 2 weeks after I got there, the team leader was fired. Like, what did I just do? I just went to Austin. I learned a lot. This place feels like a hot mess. There's no leader. They just moved offices. It's in a different location. It's downtown Philadelphia. I guess I'll make this work. I had a fiance at the time. We weren't yet married. She lived in Maryland. I'm commuting back and forth, like, whatever. I can always move my license. I'm an agent. We're disposable, I guess. So right after that period of time, it was about 30 days later, I was starting to build a business and build a team, and the OP came to me at the time and he said, do you want to be team leader? I know what happened to the last guy. Why would I want to go through that process? And he said, will you go through the process of getting to know yourself better And as a result, maybe you'll decide to take this job. Sure enough, I got married on June 17th of that year, became team leader 2 weeks later, and remained in that role in that market center for about 18 months, where I was promptly fired. Should have saw that coming. We finished number 16 in the country that year in growth, and I was promptly fired, which is a really great Christmas present. My wife was expecting our first at the time. Why am I giving you this much of the background? I screwed up a whole bunch of times, and I might need to question the relationships I was getting into that point in my life. So got fired the week of Christmas. My wife is expecting our first, and got a call almost immediately from one of the investors in that market center. And he said, hey, I'm in Florida right now on vacation. I'm coming home to meet with you. You need to be my team leader. We went through the process, and by January 1st, I had a job in a new location. Stayed there for 5 years. We built another top 25 market center in growth. Started investing in market centers. We bought 3 market centers the following year. I was a team leader in one of them, commuted back and forth, and then decided, you know what? I love people. I love pouring into agents, but I really want to coach, and I really want to go down that path. So for the last 3 years, I've been a full-time MAPS coach. I coach leadership, technology, coach a lot of our worldwide offices, the regional OPs of Serbia, Slovenia, Czech Republic, Italy, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica, and then some of our regional directors and regional leadership here in the States, as well as about 5 or 6 agents now that are in Gary's Top 100. So how many of you are in Gary's Top 100 as agents? Cool. You're going to hear some of the things maybe you hear from Gary. Is Gary sometimes unplugged? I mean, Chad, you get to be in the room with him sometimes too. Is he really unplugged at times? I'm going to do my best to not quote Gary's unplugged part, but I am going to give you some things that have nothing to do with the materials that you were sent. Is that fair? All right, now you got to know me at least a little bit. I've worn nearly every hat in this company. I was even MCA for 6 weeks. I never want to go back to that world. I don't know how any human being can do that job for more than 1 day, let alone 6 weeks. I'm incredibly grateful for that role and what they do for all of us and move this machine forward. Because as a team leader, I made a big mess quite often, and my MC had to clean it up. As an agent, I made a big mess, and my team had to clean it up. As a father, I think I make a big mess, and my wife ends up cleaning up some of this mess at times. I do have 3 small kids, 8, 5, and 3. So when the opportunity comes up to travel and teach, sometimes it's a fast yes. Sometimes it's like, well, I have my family too. I do work from home though the rest of the time, so I get to spend a lot of time with those 3 little human beings that matter the most to me. All right, any questions before we get started? Was that fast enough? All right, great. Plenty of bio. I can move that uncomfortableness around the side. You are going to hear some stories today of times that I screwed up a whole lot. You're probably going to hear some successes from other people along the way. My goal is for you to get a kind of a full spectrum idea of what the mindset and models are of millionaire real estate agents. Some of you might be them already, or you may be on a path to that already. If you're already at the million net status, awesome, let's double it. I worked with a client last year. He went from 750,000 in GCI in 2020. 2021 just closed and he hit 2.5 million net income. His GCI exploded. And you may be wondering, what did he do? Well, we're going to talk about a lot of that today. So the first half of what we're going to cover today is all about mindset. Maybe even the first 2/3. Why is that important? If your mind's right, everything else kind of takes care of itself. I am going to ask this is interactive because if you listen to me talk for the next 2 hours and 45 minutes, you will be bored out of your mind. I'll give you my wife's number. You can ask her. She doesn't let me talk that much. Okay, any questions before we get started? Why are you here? Because Nimesh called you. Awesome, that's good recruiting right there. There's wine, yes. Oh, I got mine a little early. Hear new things. Okay, cool. Why else? Learn something new to get better. Okay, any specific area you want to get better? All around. Make more money. Okay, all around, get better. Make more money. Follow up. Okay. You want to do what? You want to do that? Okay, cool. By the way, if a million, oh, go ahead. As you take a sip of water. Better mindset. Okay, as you look at that number up there or that word, what does it mean to you? Millionaire. Comfort. Okay. Opportunity. Okay, it's just a number. What's Gary worth? Gary Keller. I don't know the exact number, but it's $1 billion plus. How much bigger is $1 billion than $1 million? How many times bigger? It's 1,000 times bigger. What does that mean? So if I took a stack of $100 bills, it would take a foot to equal $1 million, approximately. That means it would take 1,000 feet or a 100-story building to be $1 billion. Does that give you a perspective? Are there a lot of 100-story buildings around? Are there any in Houston? There might be downtown. It's big, 1,000 feet of $100 bills. So how much bigger does Gary's mindset have to be than a millionaire? By default, it's got to be 1,000. So when you ask when the question's asked to me, why do I need to take this class over and over again? Why do I need to read MREA, the Red Book, over and over again? It's because it takes a long time to catch up to a billionaire's level of thinking. Questions before we get going? Anybody a billionaire? I should have asked that. Really missed that opportunity. Okay, just chat. I get that. All right, ready to get started? Okay, so either you got your materials emailed to you, or I know there's a couple copies floating around that are the 6 personal perspectives. How many of you came to 6 personal perspectives like 3 weeks ago? Okay, cool. I promise you it won't be the same class. You're gonna get something totally different, and it's part of what we're gonna cover. How many of you have been through the 6 personal perspectives before? Okay, cool. Hey, guess what? We're not gonna cover that to start, so we're good. We've got time. We'll be fine. You'll be able to take notes. We'll breathe through it. All right, so we're gonna start this class a little bit different. You don't need any materials at all. You just need somewhere to write, somewhere to take notes. So if you write in your phone, awesome. Take notes on a piece of paper, that's cool too. I'm gonna give you the 10 questions Gary Keller asks himself every single month. Would that be helpful? Yeah. Okay, so I just want you to envision the billionaire Gary Keller asking himself these questions every single month. When it was first shared with me, these were the questions Gary asked himself at the end of every year. And then we had a small group of them not that long ago. He goes, oh no, I ask him every month. These are legitimate questions that he goes through, and then after I get through it, Gary can answer each one of these in about 10 seconds each. He said it takes him anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to go through this entire list every single month, and he just builds that muscle. So first question, if you're taking notes, who are you? Who are you? Question 2. What do you believe to be true in this world? What do you believe to be true in this world? Now, I think I can add this addition on Gary's questions. I think at the end of each one, you could say right now, because he's doing this monthly. Do you think Gary's answer for what he believes to be true in this world has changed in the last couple of weeks? What's happened? Okay, yeah. Conflict, what else? I will call it war, yeah, absolutely. What else? Inflation, what else? Pandemic stuff still hanging out. What else? Okay, what happened this week in real estate? Yeah, oil went up. I was getting to interest rates. Rates are gonna hit 6% this year. I know we're recording this, and I rarely try to predict anything at all. Rates are gonna hit 6% this year. I don't know, we've got some lenders around that may agree or disagree, but this was a call with Gary yesterday. Rates are gonna hit 6% this year. How do you navigate that? You gotta ask some questions like this. It's gonna be mindset. Have any of you been in the market when the rates have gone up to 6% or more? Okay, how many years? Yeah, how long have you been selling real estate? Too long. All right, great, long enough, cool. Okay, awesome. You've been through some markets. Yeah, and did people still buy houses? Wait, you mean at 13% they still had to live somewhere? So you'll navigate it. We'll work our way through it. I saw some bad advice this week, and I'm not picking on anyone at all, so I'm not gonna use their name or where I read this. It was terrible advice. It said something to the effect of, It doesn't matter what the market's doing, just keep doing it, keep your head up, keep going. I'm calling BS. It does absolutely matter what the market does. You have to adjust your methods based on the market. You don't adjust your goals, you just adjust your methods. It was really bad advice in a very public place that a whole bunch of agents in our company are reading. So please don't read that and take action. Like, take action. Don't ignore it, don't put your head down. Putting your head down is probably the worst thing you can do in a shifting market. And I don't have to tell all of you that, you're successful agents. Question 3, what motivates you? I should have mentioned this in the beginning. What motivates you? Family. Okay. And again, I add the addition, what motivates you right now? Motivation is changing. Ask my parents. They now have grandkids. Their motivation's changed. I'm lucky if I'm the 4th or 5th hug at this point when I see them. And I only have 3 kids. What motivates you? All right, quick pause. I know some of you might have things to go to this afternoon. Feel free. If you need to stand up, walk around, if you need to leave and go to an appointment, I'm not going to take it personal. Nimesh told me already that some of you may have things to do and that I should take it personal, but I won't, even though Nimesh is my friend. I won't take it personal. It's totally fine. I'm going to push him under the bus at least once or twice while we're here. Is that safe? Yeah, I just got fired as his coach. I think it's what he just said. All right, so question 3, what motivates you? Question 4, when is enough enough for you? When is enough enough for you? Please. Enough of what? Great question. So we got to ask Gary that. Chad, I don't know if you were on the call with Gary. We got to ask him that. So Gary's holding his mug. It looks just like this one, actually, color scheme and everything, and it says never settle. He's got a t-shirt that says never settle. I own one of those t-shirts that says never settle. We're like, all right, Gary, what's the difference? You say here, when is enough enough for you? And you've got a mug that says never settle. And he said, I'm so glad you asked that. I'll give you my answer. Enough is never enough for the things that matter the most. Said, okay, great. What does that mean? That sounds cool. And he said, his granddaughter. I believe his granddaughter's name is Mary. It's also Gary's wife's name. And he said, there's not enough laughter that comes out of Mary. Ever, ever, ever. There's not enough time that I ever can spend with her. To everything else that doesn't matter, there's a finite amount that does. It's enough. It's fine. I don't need more for more's sake. He said at Family Reunion, were any of you at the CEO Mastermind at Family Reunion in Epcot? Yeah, you may remember one of the things Gary said. It's in my phone so that I say it correctly. Watch being addicted to success. What does that mean? Watch being addicted to success. It's a real question. What does that mean? Go ahead, say it out loud. You don't know when it's enough. Yeah, it happens. And you're always climbing and you never actually get there. You arrive, and unfortunately, the only time you arrive at that trajectory is when all of your closest family and friends are watching you lay in a box. That's not success. Someone got to ask Gary I don't even understand this. I went from mega camp as a recruit, and I got a text while I was there from my business partner at the time that we were starting to build a team, and he said, say hi to Gary. And my response, I'm just going to be transparent, was, Gary who? He said, Gary Keller. I said, Gary Keller who? He's like, that book that we read. You know the red one? He wrote it. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, cool. I had no idea who he was. 12 months later, I was speaking on stage at mega camp. What happened in that short amount of time hurts my head to think about it. And now this many years later, to have the privilege to hear from him in small groups, it's so humbling. I do my very best to not speak a word and just listen to what he has to say. Because I promise you I'm going to make the conversation dumber if I start to speak. And by the way, he's not a prophet. So I know that sometimes we're close enough to Austin. He's not watching this, I don't think. But like, he's wrong. He'll admit it. He'll say when he's wrong. He messes up a lot. He just fails really fast so that we don't even feel it. And then he just keeps moving forward. He shared with a group at Family Reunion an immediate apology at Family Reunion. So 5 o'clock, and perhaps you were in the room. He walked into his group and he said, I owe you an apology. I didn't follow the career visiting process with the last 3 presidents of our company. He followed it entirely with Mark King. Every bit he did himself. Why is that important? Whose fault was it that those CEOs were unsuccessful? He owned it. That's leadership. My goodness, that's leadership. The part that he skipped, and I can share this with this group, this is safe, right? Okay, safe enough, even though we're recording it. We're not publishing this like nationally, right? All right, great. All right, where's my friend? He's gonna have to edit some of these parts out. Gonna have to edit a bunch of these parts out, potentially. He skipped the life story part of career visioning because he knew them. He knew those guys. And I say guys because they were all 3 males in a row. You line them up, they almost look alike, the 3 of them in a row. 3 people that he hired in a row that he knew really well, so skip the life story. Please don't skip any parts if you're going to hire this year, and we're going to get to the organizational model in a minute. All right, question 5. Did that answer the question of when is enough enough? Okay. All right, question 5. Why do you work so hard? Why do you work so hard? You like being productive. Okay. You've got goals. Great. Do you think if you asked yourself that question every single month, it would change? Question 6. What do you seek control over? What do you seek control over? If you wrote down everything, please consider a change. That's unsustainable. Yes. What do you seek control over? And again, keep in mind, right now, what do I seek control over? There's a concept that if you want to go up, you've got to give up something. Have anyone heard this concept before? What do you have to give up in order to go up? There's 4 things. Control is one of them. Money is another. Time. What's the 4th one? Don't have to give up eating. Don't have to give your kids opportunities. In order to go up, you've got to say no to something else. One or a couple of those 4 things you've actually got to give up in order to go up. 100% of the time. One or a couple of those things will show up either in the short term or long term. Money, opportunity, this is in a different order, time, and control. This is all in your materials, right? Not. This isn't written to my knowledge, except for in Gary's notebook. All right, question 7. This one I can still envision. So just imagine Gary laying in bed at night and asking this question: what do you fear when the lights are out? What do you fear when the lights are out? Yeah, the fear. What do you think Gary fears when the lights are out? One of his biggest fears that he shared with us is the Gary Keller that he doesn't know yet that wakes up tomorrow and is willing to outwork him and do something he hasn't done to this point and could put him out of business. It's the next Gary Keller. That's his fear. Who's that going to be? Who's willing to be smarter, work harder, hire better, do better things than he is? And that's what motivates him at a high level. So what do you fear when the lights are out? Question number 8. What regrets are you trying to avoid? What regrets are you trying to avoid? Because I don't think he's watching, I'm going to make an addition to this one too. Whose regrets are you trying to avoid? My dad went to 1 semester of junior college. My mom dropped out of school when she was a junior and got her GED. They got married when they were 20 and 17. Somehow, they're still married today. They had me at 21 and 18. 18 months after they got married, or at least that's what they tell me. 18 months after they got married. What regrets am I trying to avoid? My oldest is 8, and I'm 41. I waited a little bit longer. I waited a lot longer than they did. I remember driving my dad to his 40th birthday party. I drove him to his 40th birthday party. By the way, I grew up in New Jersey. You had to be 17 to get a license. I was a senior in high school, graduating from high school, my dad turned 40. Now at 41, I have an 8-year-old, 5-year-old, and 3-year-old. What was I trying to avoid? What regrets was I trying to avoid? I want to have a margin in my life, to be totally honest. I remember not having a margin in our life. I remember the question that my younger brothers still ask. We'll go to a restaurant, we'll sit down, they'll get a soda or beverage or whatever, and they'll finish it, and their first question to the waiter is what? Or waitress? Are there free refills? Yeah, that's programmed into my brothers. It's probably programmed into me too. Programmed into their mind, we've got to ask, is it free refills? That's how we grew up. Like if in the off chance we went to a restaurant, don't finish your drink unless there's free refills. So maybe that gives you a little bit of perspective as well. All right, question number 9. We did what regress trying to avoid was 8. Question 9. 9 and 10 to me are going to seem a little bit similar, yet there's a very distinct difference. Question 9, how do you bring meaning to your life? How do you bring meaning to your life? That's not easy to answer. It's not easy for me to answer. For some, it may be very easy to answer. All right, question 10, I said it's similar. Question 10 is, what makes your life meaningful? What makes your life meaningful? Great question. I was just going to ask the room, but you already beat me to it. What do you think? How are those questions different? How do you bring meaning to your life versus what makes your life meaningful? I'll give you my answer if somebody doesn't have it. Go ahead, please. It may be people. Okay. Who loves you? Okay, that's a great perspective. And I'm just going to give you my opinion on it. I think the first one for me is action-based. Is what am I doing in order to achieve that? And then the second is how am I getting fulfillment, and it may be through the love of people, whatever that looks like. I think they're different. At least for me, they're different. Yeah, it could be. It could be that achievement or that whatever you've done up to that point. And again, every month, Gary's going through that. So I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, there's not a chance in the world I can go through that in 10 minutes, answer all those questions honestly for myself, starting right now. Not ready to. So I got these questions for the first time in October, got them for the second time in November, got them for the third time in December, and decided, you know what, I probably should do something with this. I'm a slow learner, I guess, and picked up on one. So I'm going to give you the action plan that I took. It's up to you if you want to accept this or not. Underline which one you'd like to start with, or circle it, or whatever you do digitally to make that happen. Any one you want. Pick one. And then pull out your calendar. And I want you to pick a day next week that you can devote 30 minutes to taking the first step in answering that question. You don't have to do this. It's up to you. What would happen if you took 30 minutes in the next 7 days in order to take the first step to answering one of those questions? What do you think? Somebody yell it out. What do you think will happen? The answer might change. You can't possibly have the same mindset when you leave that conversation with yourself that you started with. Thank you. That's exactly right. You'll at least take that first step. So I picked one for myself. I'd encourage you to pick one. Last step around that. Share with someone at some point today your intention to do that, and come up with an accountability partner. Hey, I picked Tuesday by 12. When did you pick? Okay, great. Let's talk at 12:30 and just say, got it. Done. Took the first step. It'll also push you on a trajectory to maybe look at the second question. Then maybe look at the 2 together. Then maybe add a third. What would your life look like if you asked yourself those 10 questions every single month? And if you don't like one of them, Gary wrote it, not me. If you love them all, I get to be the messenger. All right, questions before we get going? How are we doing so far? Okay. Am I talking too fast? Okay, again, from Philadelphia, sometimes speed gets out of control. I only had half a cup of coffee today. This was tea, so I should be okay speed-wise, although I don't really sleep all that well in a hotel, so you never know where that's going to go. All right, we're going to watch a short video to kick this off. Some of you may have seen this already, and if you have, great, you're going to get to watch it again. What I want you to look for in this video are key things that actually resonate with you. So again, really short video. Let me just pull it up.
Imagine a big explosion as you climb through 3,000 feet. Imagine a plane full of smoke. Imagine an engine going clack, 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 clack. Sounds scary. Well, I had a unique seat that day. I was sitting in 1D. I was the only one who could talk to the flight attendants. So I looked at them right away, and they said, no problem. We probably hit some birds. The pilot had already turned the plane around, and we weren't that far. You could see Manhattan. 2 minutes later, 3 things happened at the same time. The pilot lines up the plane with the Hudson River. It's usually not the route. He turns off the engines. Now imagine being on a plane with no sound. And then he says 3 words, as unemotional 3 words as I've ever heard. He says, brace for impact. I didn't have to talk to the flight attendant anymore. I could see in her eyes, it was terror. Life was over. And I want to share with you 3 things I learned about myself that day. I learned that it all changes in an instant. We have this bucket list, we have these things we want to do in life. And I thought about all the people I wanted to reach out that I didn't. All the fences I wanted to mend. All the experiences I wanted to have and I never did. As I thought about that, later on, I came up with a saying, which is, I collect bad wines. Because if the wine is ready and the person is there, I'm opening it. I no longer want to postpone anything in life. And that urgency, that purpose has really changed my life. The second thing I learned that day, and this is as we clear the George Washington Bridge, which was by not a lot. I thought about, wow, I really feel one real regret. I've lived a good life. In my own humanity and mistakes, I've tried to get better at everything I tried. But in my humanity, I also allow my ego to get in. And I regretted the time I wasted in things that did not matter with people that matter. And I thought about my relationship with my wife, with my friends, with people. And after, as I reflected on that, I decided to eliminate negative energy from my life. It's not perfect. It's a lot better. I've not had a fight with my wife in 2 years. It feels great. I'm no longer trying to be right. I choose to be happy. The third thing I learned, and this is as your mental clock starts going 15, 14, 13, you can see the water coming. I'm saying, please blow up. Right? I don't want this thing to break in 20 pieces like you've seen in those documentaries. And as we're coming down, I had a sense of, wow, dying is not scary. It's almost like we've been preparing for it our whole lives. But it was very sad. I didn't want to go. I love my life. And that sadness really framed in one thought, which is, I only wish for one thing. I only wish I could see my kids grow up. About a month later, I was in a performance by my daughter, first grader, not much artistic talent yet. And I'm bawling, I'm crying like a little kid. And it made all the sense in the world to me. I realized at that point, by connecting those 2 dots, that the only thing that matters in my life is being a great dad. Above all, the only goal I have in life is to be a good dad. I was given the gift of a miracle of not dying that day. I was given another gift, which was to be able to see into the future and come back and live differently. I challenge you guys that are flying today. Imagine the same thing happens on your plane, and please don't. But imagine, and how would you change? What would you get done that you're waiting to get done because you think you'll be here forever? How would you change your relationships and the negative energy in them? And more than anything, are you being the best parent you can? Thank you.
All right, how many of you have seen that before? What'd you write down? Mm-hmm. How often do we postpone things? Why? Too busy. Not enough time. Kids, family, life, things happen. So if you haven't, how many of you never saw that before, that video? Okay, great. So famous Sully Sullivan landed on the Hudson River. I happen to live not all that far from New York. I was there 2 weekends ago. You know, I've flown out of JFK. You don't want to see what he saw and see the Hudson be lined up with where you're going. All of those things are really real. Any of you been in a close call before in a flight? Okay, cool. It's not fun. You remember it. You walk away as a changed person. How come we delay things until things like that happen? Why does it take a punch in the face? Think you're gonna live forever. We feel invincible. All those kind of things happen. So what we're gonna talk about today is ways to not delay what you wanna do. I got to come teach this class, or a version of this class. We called it a mid-year reset back in May of 2021, like less than a year ago. I was down in Clear Lake, got to teach it for the combination of Clear Lake and Pearland. I have the privilege to partner with one of their leaders as a coach. She was kind enough to have me come in, and we had the class right around Cinco de Mayo. The reason I remember that is I woke up in the morning to a text message, which is never good. When you wake up from a text message from your parents and they say, Pop died. That simple. So how was the class that day? I was teaching. So as that video was going, I'm standing in the corner like writing my own notes. But I'll tell you what happened that day was I realized I've taught this class a whole bunch of times and I'm still delaying things. So I had some bucket list items. Call them bucket list items, call them things I just wanted to accomplish. And one of them was to take my dad to Austin. He had never been to Austin, and we wanted to drive cars around the racetrack. There's have you been to the Formula One track there? Hands up, down, nobody? I see some sort of nods. All right, cool. It's a 3.5-mile track in Austin. I don't watch Formula One racing, nothing against anybody that does. I don't watch any kind of racing for that matter. I'm sorry, I live in Philadelphia. There's not a lot of racetracks around Center City, Philadelphia, although the Pocono's not that far away, and Dover Downs is apparently pretty close. Anyway, long story short, I had been delaying it. Why had I been delaying to take my dad to Austin? I'm too busy. I have 3 kids. It's too expensive. We're in a pandemic. And we just got into a year one, fully ending year one at that point almost. But it was excuse after excuse after excuse. So I got home, we had my grandfather's services, talked to my wife, and I said, this is the year. Let's do it. I'm gonna go ahead and book it. Do you care? Now, by the way, asking your wife right after your grandfather's service, do you care, and putting something you want to do after that, that was kind of dirty. I get it. Full disclosure. Could she say no to anything I was going to ask after that? Absolutely not. So I got to book it, booked the trip to go the end of 4th of July. 4th of July was like on a Monday, I think, last year. And we went like that. We were leaving Friday, going to drive cars on Saturday, Sunday. I made a mistake. What happens when you don't see a lot of cousins for a really long time? They all stay at your house for your grandfather's service. We had a couple cocktails. And I booked it the next day, and I guess I didn't read all the fine print exactly right. So I knew everything was booked. We had a hotel, we had flights, we were gonna go there. So we jump in an Uber on Saturday morning. We had a great dinner the night before, great breakfast that morning. Get out to this place. The Uber driver's looking at us like, what are these 2 idiots doing going out? There's nothing going on today. We pull in, and there are go-karts in the parking lot. I had an oh no, we'll say, moment of I just flew my dad however many miles it is from Philadelphia to Austin, 2 expensive flights in the front of the plane, of course, because he didn't fly first class, and I wanted to gift, like, let's have a good experience. 2 really nice hotel suites at my favorite hotel there, the whole thing, and we're gonna go drive go-karts in the parking lot of Formula One track. What did I do wrong? And there was that question mark, and I could see he's still happy. You know, we're getting to spend time together. That was the important part. I kind of missed that at that moment. And yet a little bit of a disappointment. Okay, we're still gonna have fun. You still have to put a helmet on. They still go 55, 60 miles an hour. All is fine. So we get out, we're waiting, we're 30 minutes early, and we hear the noise that's, you can tell immediately, not a go-kart. And at that track, if you've never been, you can walk right out to the grandstands and like walk up and see what's happening if there's not an event going on. And we see 4 M-Class BMWs going blasting around the track as fast as they possibly can. And then I see a sign that says BMW M Days. Like, I don't want to do that crap in the parking lot. I want to do that out on the, I want that. So I made a couple phone calls. I finally got a call back from BMW, and they said, it's so weird. We actually have 2 seats available at 1 o'clock today. Do you want them? So quickly grabbing my dad's wallet, to get his ID, not to get his credit card. I'm pulling out my credit card. He's saying, "What are you doing?" And fine, book him immediately. We walk around the back of, which was ridiculously far, around the back to kind of go in the back entrance. We check in, my phone rings. BMW calling me back. "Sir, we don't know what happened. We had a 1-hour glitch in our system. I was not supposed to sell you 2 tickets. Yet if they let you in, make them kick you out. Have fun." We got to spend 4 hours driving cars. I saw 155 on the speedometer when I was driving, with very little instruction, by the way. You had helmets on, passengers next to each other, 4 cars in a row. First car, anybody done that experience or something like that before? Okay, so the first car is the instructor. He's got a walkie-talkie. You've got a walkie-talkie too, but it's in the door and he says, "Don't touch it. I'll talk to you." 4 cars going in a row. And again, I saw 155 on my speedometer when I was going. My dad took off when he first going, and I grabbed onto that bar, which we call something different in the Northeast. It's an oh no bar, we'll say. Again, I'm going to keep it as clean as I can. And we kept going, and after that, I didn't want to be a passenger. I only wanted to be a driver. So we're doing laps around. The car in the front is giving you directions. "Hey, red car, you're gripping the wheel too tight." How in the heck does this guy know that I'm gripping the wheel too tight? He's 3 cars ahead of me. We're going 155. I'm holding on for dear life, sweating bullets with a helmet on in an air-conditioned car. This guy's driving with one hand holding a walkie-talkie, looking in the rearview mirror. What's the difference between him and me? There's another word that comes to mind. It's mastery. Yeah, confidence, mindset, all those things. This guy, it's a walk in the park. He can't believe we're driving so slow. He's making fun of us, essentially, on his walkie-talkie for driving too slow to keep up. Anybody drive at 155 before? Yeah, how's that? Uh-huh. Yeah, you feel it. You know what's happening. You know what's going on. All right, why do I share that story? Yeah, it has to do with mindset. There's going to be a bit of a pucker that happens, for lack of better words. I missed one of the turns. They have cones set up to tell you when to brake, and I missed one, and my dad was the passenger. And there was a moment at which he turned white as a ghost, and I could see him out of the corner of my eye, because we were everything but going to flip the car. And it turns out they're incredibly stable. I can't believe they just shoved us in a bunch of M5s and let us just go nuts with good direction. And we had a lot of fun. I learned a couple things that day. And the reason I share that, number one, I needed to stop delaying things that were important. It was an expensive trip. It really was. Guess what? Money's replaceable. But to have a healthy dad that I can take with me and do that, 48 hours that were unbelievably amazing. We had a great time. He tried to buy dinner that night after we had a whole bunch of margaritas to recover from that driving day. And yet, no, we got to experience the whole entire thing. So write down, what have you been delaying? What have you been delaying? Last part of that story. It's the only weekend in history BMW has ever done that in Austin. They happened to be there for the 4 days that we were there. Happened to be that they had 2 open seats. Happened to be that it was the 1 hour time that I called. Happened to be that it was sold out the entire time up into that. Had I actually tried to book the right thing, I wouldn't have gone. So what do you need to say yes to? Yeah, you never know. You never know what can happen when you put it out there to the universe. I got a call from somebody earlier today and said, "I just got the biggest offer that I ever imagined professionally." And I said, "Great, what do you want to do with it?" And she shared with me that she had talked to her husband about a year ago about what she thought might be possible for her career future. And he said to her, "Be careful what you put out there." And a year later, the biggest opportunity of her life came out there. And her question to me today on our call early this morning, "I don't know if I deserve this." A little bit of imposter syndrome. I don't know if this is okay. I don't know if I can do this. Maybe it's just me that's experienced that all the time. All the time that shows up. When I talk to top producers and I coach top producers throughout the world, same thing. Biggest fear they have, being found out that they're not as good as they portray to everyone else. I wake up almost every morning and look in the mirror and I say, this person has no idea what he's doing. But the hope is that there's potential in this person I'm seeing. And you may be saying you could use therapy, not only coaching, and that while that may be true, I think that's actually, for me, that's a healthy way to go. I don't have this figured out. I'm on the journey with you. I'm figuring it out together, but I know somewhere in there's a lot of potential, and I'm moving towards that potential. Interestingly enough, I shared that with my coach. I have two, because a hot mess. And he shared with me, it's so funny you say that, I think the exact same way and the exact same thing. No surprise, he's been my coach for 8 years now. Okay, what else did you hear in that story? Put yourself out in that position. Yeah, had I been however many miles it is from Austin to Philadelphia away, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to have that 1 hour time slot. Also, put it out there. I'm going to do this. This is my goal. This is what I want to achieve. All right, ready for the materials? We're doing okay? All right, so we're going to get to some of these materials. There's like 300 pages of materials. We're not even going to go close to that. We're going to graze the surface of all 6 of these personal perspectives. My goal after this first part of the mindset is that you leave with an action plan towards something that actually matters to you. Is that fair? All right, good. So what do top producers have in common? Oh, we're going to have that day. We're going to have that day that this doesn't want to cooperate. It's mine. I can't even complain. It's my own thing. All right, hang on one second. I used to be. There we go. Now we've got success. So what we're going to talk about is what differentiates people that are successful versus those that aren't as successful. You may have heard this before if you've been through 6 personal perspectives. It's mindsets, it's attitude, and I just skipped the last one, so I'll put it up so you can visually see it. And their general approach to life. Mindset, attitude, and their approach to life. That is the thing that they tend to have in common, the most successful individuals. What we're going to talk about today, and you may have already realized this, has kind of nothing to do with real estate. The mindset piece of this will apply to any business you choose to start. It'll choose to it could apply to your family. It could apply to a charity. It could apply to whatever you decide to do with it. The mindset piece, I believe you'll find, will be transferable. So those are the 6 things up there. We're going to cover each one of them briefly. Committing to self-mastery, commit to the 80-20 principle, moving from E to P, making learning-based the foundation of your action plan, removing your limiting beliefs. Oh, any of you not have any limiting beliefs? I'm going to look down because you're a liar. And lastly, being accountable. I know that one's hard to see. I'm just opening up my other file. Bear with me. Cool. All right, so first one, I'm going to nail this. I'm going to master it. Great. We're going to go through this kind of quick because we're going to hit each one and unpack it in a little bit more detail. So your challenge, if you have your materials, I believe this is on page 9.
Yes.
Cool. Flip over to page 11 if you have your materials. I want you to write down, if you don't have materials, totally cool, write down 3 things you want to accomplish in your life. What are the 3 things, or what are 3 things that you would like to accomplish in your life? They're not the only 3, but these are the big ones. You may call them bucket list items. You may call them experiences. It might be who you want to be. Might be something you want to achieve or do. The key here is that they're meaningful to you. I'm going to give you another 15 seconds. Write down 3 if you can. If you have less than that, that's okay. Try not to go more than 3. I know you probably have a big bucket list. I coach someone that has 50 things on his bucket list. That's okay. Judgment free. We picked the 3 you wanted to focus on first. Okay. 5 more seconds. I see a clock in the back. This is actually awesome. I can really time it. Usually I just make it up, but now I can really tell how much time it is. Okay, circle 1. Circle which one you're going to start with and which one you want to focus on for the remainder of the mindset piece of this class. That's the one we're building an action plan around. Anybody want to share theirs? To be happy? Awesome. Could you go further and define that? You don't have to do it out loud, but maybe go further and define what does that mean for you and how are you going to, what's the scoreboard to know that you are happy? Again, I'm not going to put you on the spot. Thank you for sharing that. So I'll hand over here. Manage your time. Same thing. I would encourage you to get really specific. What does that look like? In what way are you going to manage your time? As specific as you possibly can. so that you know that you achieved it. You can check that off. You may find that what you initially wrote down, and thank you for sharing as well. You may find that what you initially wrote down is actually leading to something else. So is it managing time so that I can do X or experience this or be around more often? One of my goals was to leave being a team leader in a market center. And by all accounts, I got a lot of, you're stupid for doing that. You've got a great job. It pays you lots of money. Why do you want to quit? And the reality is I drove an hour and 10 minutes each way every day. What do we get in the Philadelphia area that you don't really see that often? Cheesesteak sometimes, but really it's the snow. It's the bad weather. What happens to an hour and 10-minute commute each way when it snows? At best. And our turnpike has 2 lanes, not 47 like the one here. And our drivers, they drive about as fast. They just show you more hand signals along the way. It's rarely waving either. Rarely, they're coming from Philadelphia. That's why. There's too many of the Northeast people moving down. Okay, so why do I say that? It gave me back my life and my time so that I could spend it with my family. Because I could do it. I sustained it for 18 months. It was fine until I did the math and realized I'm working 1 extra day a week that I'm not getting paid for. Instead, I'm sitting in my car. 1 extra work day per week. That's 4 months. That's a lot a year. How many is that a year? That's a month and a half of work days or 5 or 6 weeks of vacation that I'm not taking because I'm spending it in my car. It was a big aha moment for me that I had to leave to then go experience what was next, which was working from home, being a full-time coach. I was already coaching, but being a full-time, leaving that job that paid really well and try to figure out how to build a coaching business. Does that help a little bit? How they kind of tie together? All right, everybody have time now to circle your thing? Cool. If you've got paper with you or the materials, if you have the materials, you're going to be page 13. I want you to actually write down that goal. If you're on page 13, there's like a couple boxes that you may be seeing, or a couple circles, not boxes. Get my geometry right today. And the first question is, what's your goal? I actually want you to write it again. I know that feels weird. Why do I want you to write out the goal you just wrote out and circled? Why am I having you write it again? The more times you do that, the more times you create it. Like, put it out there, write it down. Question 2, how are you doing with it? By the way, this model is right from MREA. What's your goal? How are you doing with it? Question 3, how do you feel about that? We got to ask Gary a couple of weeks ago, how do you define success? I love being on with other coaches because while I'm on mute, they're happy to answer questions all they want or bring up questions and say things to Gary that maybe I'm just too nervous to say. And he said, I'll define success for you. Success for Gary in his mind, and maybe this is your definition, maybe not, is the achievement of a predetermined goal. Okay, so far so good. And feeling good about it. He defines it not being successful if you achieve a predetermined goal and you feel bad about it. He said, like, if you work 100 hours a week and you feel bad about that, that's not a successful business. Some of you may have heard before, Gary has said many times, working long hours is cheating. How do you feel about that statement from our billionaire owner? Working long hours is cheating. What does that mean? Okay. Somebody's getting cheated. And it does. It rewards almost any behavior if you do it long enough. One year, we used to get, he'll refer to himself, we used to get agitated Gary at events. Anyone seen agitated Gary before? It's not fun. There was a period of time in which we got agitated Gary a lot. In fact, everybody came to Austin for an event one time that we all paid our way to get there. And he started it out and he said, none of you understand leverage. If you did, none of you would be here. Thanks. Gary? And then somebody was fired up in the room and said, well, clearly you don't understand either because you're here as well. Welcome to our event. It's going to be a fun one. We got a lot of agitated Gary at that event. It was really fun. Learned a lot. So hard work is cheating. I'm sorry, hard work is not cheating. Long hours is, because it rewards everything equally. You could do the wrong thing long enough and still get some kind of results. As crazy as it sounds, if I drove for the next 20 years throughout Texas, I'm probably going to end up at my destination, even if I don't know where I'm going. Maybe 30 years. Texas is really big. Eventually, I'm going to stumble across whatever that is that I set out to actually do. I'm just not willing to do that. So that's why models are so important. All right, lastly, what will your future look like if you did not attain that goal or achieve that goal? If your answer to question 4 is who cares, maybe that goal's not actually your goal. First time I went through this class and I actually participated as a student, what I wrote down was somebody else's goal. Wasn't mine. I had this mindset around I've got to help other people. And by helping other people, I can help myself. And by the way, it's okay if you have that mindset too. That's actually good. And it's a strength that can be overused. So as a result, I didn't have my own goal. It was the achievement of when I do this, this person gets this, and I get nothing. Or I get whatever's left over. So if that goal was also the case, maybe go back and just reflect. Be selfish for the purpose of this goal. All right, anybody make adjustments? Still good. Okay, this class gets a little deep in case you didn't feel it already. Ahas from this chapter and what we've covered so far. Not all at once. Yell it out. Set your goals. Write it over and over again. Yep. Absolutely. What else? 2 more. Yes. Law of attraction will, and I love that addition of be careful. Yeah, because it works the other way too. It really does. If you're out there looking for something negative, you will find it. You will easily find it, unfortunately. It comes naturally. All right, one more aha from this chapter. Define them. Get clarity around what you actually want. If you don't define them, no one's going to help you actually get there. Okay, what does AHA stand for? You know what's an acronym? Agents? It's like that light bulb moment. You're exactly right. Actually, AHA is also agents helping agents. The idea is that when you share something as an AHA, somebody else is going to leave with that concept and it's actually going to help them. How many of you have been to a class before and somebody else's AHA is a thing that you took action on or you wrote down? Happens. So agents helping agents. But you're both right as well. It is also that light bulb moment. All right. Step 1, commit to self-mastery. Self-mastery is all about the knowledge, possessions, skills, habits that make you. Cool. It's knowing what you're good at. Self-mastery is all about knowing what you're actually good at and what makes you, you. So by a show of hands, how many of you are right-handed? Okay. Any lefties? There's always 1 or 2. I'm not going to pick on the lefties. I'm only going to pick on the righties. So for you, those of you that are right-handed, how much time do you spend writing with your left hand? Why not? Yeah, so unless there's an injury or some reason you'd need to do that, it's a total waste of time. So why do we focus so much time working on our weaknesses? Will we be better served working on our strengths and actually getting better at what we're good at and then hiring out for our weaknesses? And not to pick on the young lady in the back about lefties. The reason I don't pick on lefties is because I'm told if you went to Catholic school during a certain period of time that the nuns helped you learn how to write with your right hand no matter what. Maybe that's just a South Philly thing that I experienced with some of my friends there. That if you were a lefty, they helped you learn how to be a righty anyway. So that's the logic behind that. Not to pick on anyone's hand preference or if it's even a preference for that matter. All right, questions, concerns, good? Okay, so knowing what you're really great at, if you're following along on our materials, what page are we on? 17, perfect. I think we're on 19, but thank you. Really close. It says 17 up there. Going to 19. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Who's read The Outliers? Okay, cool. So a couple of you have. If you haven't, I'd encourage you to read it. It is a great read. Malcolm Gladwell, well-known author, my travel edition here of the book. What's the concept in this book for those of you that have read it? What's it all about? Okay, cool. Maybe I'm going to have to give it to you. That's okay. The wine's not here yet. 10,000 hours. Who's heard about 10,000 hours till mastery? That's Malcolm Gladwell. That's The Outliers. He goes over and over again, examples of people that had 10,000 hours and talent and skills and ultimately had mastery of something. So he tells the story of the Beatles, the band. You've heard of them, right? Good? Okay, cool. They've sold a couple records throughout the decades. The Beatles, how did they get started in music? What was their real start? Small clubs. Very specific. They started in gentlemen's clubs. They played 8-hour sets, 8 hours at a time in a gentleman's club. How long are their songs each?
3 minutes.
Yeah, how many songs are you playing in an 8-hour set? Anyone playing bands that's in the room? Yeah, what kind of music did you play? Great. What was the longest set you ever played somewhere or gig? Yeah, imagine playing 8 hours at a time, 5 days a week. So really successful because they were really tight as a band. They were forced to be really good, and talent. Those two things together get you to mastery faster. So when you think down to that thing you wrote, whatever that was, it was your goal. How do your strengths help you achieve that goal? How is it that you can use your strengths to actually go towards that goal? Anything come to mind for anybody that wrote it down? You wrote down your goal. How are your strengths going to help you? Belief? Okay. Say more. You need to identify your strengths. Great. Continue to work through that strength. So knowing what you're good at and what you're not going at, having that mindset of that belief around what's possible, and then looking at putting those pieces together for how it can actually get you to that thing that you wanted to achieve. When's the last time you did something for the first time that you kind of sucked at? Okay, good. Are you allowed to say it out loud? I used to get nervous before.
Talking about that.
Oh, okay, good. I wasn't either, and now suddenly we are. So for me, it was driving that car. And before that, it was fly fishing for the first time. And before that, it was something else. But I asked this question to a friend that I had a coaching relationship for a while with. And I said, when's the last time you did something for the first time that you sucked at? Great coaching, right? And he said, and this is burned in my brain, the first couple words out of his mouth are, please don't laugh at me. But why do I remember that part? Not only that, we're also afraid to put out what's actually our goals. He was afraid to tell me what he actually wanted to try. Now, here's what he didn't know. He didn't know the story that I told you guys already. The thing he wanted to try was racing cars. And I had just gotten back from racing cars, literally 30 days before that. So I said, hey, check your phone. I just texted you a video of me driving a car at 150 miles an hour in a really bad way. Do you want to do this? So it was, had I not asked that question, I'm sorry, I'll say it a different way. Had he not been willing to answer that question, we never would have had that connection. So I wonder, who have you not shared your goal with that can actually help you achieve it? My wife and I had the goal of going to the Masters. We really wanted to go to the Masters, the golf event in Augusta. Anybody been to the Masters? Yeah, if you like golf at all, put it on your bucket list. It's ridiculously amazing. We put it out there one year. We went to the couples goal setting retreat from the one thing that Jeff Woods did. Jeff Woods and Jay Papazan put this on together in Austin in 2019 or 2018, I think we went, 2018. We went in November. Immediately, my parents thought that we were going through couples counseling. Said, we're going to a couples retreat. They're like, are you guys okay? Yes, we're fine. We know you just had a third kid. Is everything okay? Like, yeah, we're totally fine. Everything's good. This is about business and about life. And we laid out our goals, and we actually laid out our someday goals then our 5-year goals, then our 3-year goals, ultimately our 1-year goals. What do we want to accomplish? And then we put some bucket list items. We listed 5. One of them was to go to the Masters. And you may be thinking, that's stupid. I don't care what you think. I went. It was cool. But I had that mindset, I'll be honest, as I wrote it down, I thought, I don't know if I want to share this with anybody. Second thing we wrote down was we want to be in our forever house. We just had our 3rd daughter. I have a girl, boy, girl. Life is exciting and fun and adventurous. And we needed more space because I knew I was going to be transitioning to working at home full time. We had a great house and yet didn't make sense to have 3 kids and work from home. I would have gone insane. I probably would have worked like outside or something. I don't know what I would have done at that point. So we put that out in November. That's when it was. April 1st, we settled on our forever house. April 8th, we were at the Masters. Again, story of, and I hope you're not hearing successes in this, like, oh, you got to do all these cool things. No, I really believe it was writing it down, having conversations around it that made us open to doing that. Masters story, real quick. Got an email from my title company that I had done deals with for years. They emailed the entire list of people that had done deals with them and all the owners of the market centers where they had a joint venture together and said, we have Masters tickets. Who wants them? How fast do you think they went? I happened to be sitting in front of my computer at that moment. I happened to email them back. I happen to have a really great relationship with that title company as well. And they responded with, 2 are yours. So imagine this, it's 3 weeks before closing on our house. And the event's 1 week after closing. We're moving our whole world and 3 small kids. Anyone done that recently? Has anyone moved recently? By the way, good practice, you're in real estate, move. Buy a house. It sucks. We torture people. We moved 1 mile, door to door, 1 mile. And it was painful. And I had movers. They took like 27 trips and like a giant, I don't even understand how we had so much stuff. We only been in our house for like 3 years at that point. And they moved it. So we had boxes which felt like up to the ceiling. And here I'm saying to my wife, hey, you want to go to the Masters the week after closing? I know you haven't been away since we had our 3rd child, except to go to a couples retreat. Want to go to the Masters? We wrote it down, we got to do it, and we went for the day. It was unbelievable. So again, put things out there that actually matter to you. Does this help? Is it okay that I'm sharing personal stories? I have the microphone, so it's probably not going to change, but I'll adjust if you want me to. Okay, I didn't mention one other thing. My intention is to get through as much or all the materials that we can. So if you need to like use the restroom, make a call, like just keep going. I'm going to keep going too, so I won't take it personal. I know I mentioned if you had to go to an appointment, but same thing. You need a break, take it. I'm good. I won't take it personally. I may not even notice you left. Okay, so knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not good at. So I want you to think about that goal you just wrote down. What are some potential obstacles? So we're not going to take the time right now to write them out. But immediately that I said, what are some potential obstacles? Who had something that popped in their head? Amazing how that happens, isn't it? So there's a follow-up question. The follow-up question is that movable? Could I use my strengths to actually overcome that obstacle? What are the weaknesses that might actually hinder me from doing that? I want to be happy, but I choose not to be. I'm not picking on you. You just happen to be in the front. You said that. Doubt. Things show up. So what can you do to overcome that obstacle or to remove it? I had a coach in my world for a while that said, you can't control the first thing that comes in your head in the morning, yet you can control the second. So get the first one out as quickly as possible if it's not in alignment with your daily goals. Made a big difference. How many of you went to family reunion or watched it digitally? Either one. Okay, I'm going to assign you to something because you said happiness. Watch the keynote speaker, Sean Achor. The keynote speaker was literally on happiness and how to be happier.
What's his name?
Sean Achor, A-C-H-O-R. He wrote 2 books as well, maybe 3. He does a TED Talk. I thought he was one of the best keynotes I've ever seen at KW. Really, really good. S-H-A-W-N, I think. Now I'm blanking on it. But watch the KW Vision speech. Or I'm sorry, the keynote. So good example. We had a couple people in class choose to share their goals. One of the individuals that shared their goal on happiness, and we had a solution in the classroom. Is that by accident? Okay, so for all of you that didn't share your goals, I'm not picking on you. I didn't share my goals either. And yet the fewer people we share them with, the less likely they are to happen. Dick Dillingham probably comes to this region once in a while, right? And have you ever heard from or seen Dick Dillingham in a class? If you haven't, he's one of my absolute favorite people in the world, especially inside of KW. Brilliant instructor. He's been selling real estate in Plano for a long time. Really knows his stuff. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. Shared with me that he also had the Masters on his bucket list. And one year, he finally got to go. Got to go to the Masters. He's sitting in Savannah coming home. Anyone ever fly out of the Savannah I'm sorry, not Savannah, the Augusta airport? You have. It's like the size of this room, the Augusta airport. If you're in Augusta on Sunday morning of the Masters, you're flying home from being at the Masters. If you're there Monday morning after the Masters, you're flying home because there's no other reason, no offense, to go to Augusta. If you're from Augusta, I'm sorry. But outside of that, there's no other reason to go there except for the Masters. And Dixie's his friend from high school. And he walks over because this is who he is. And he starts talking to him. He's like, hey, I'm sure you're here for the Masters too. And the guy's like, yeah, I'm here. I go every year. He said, what do you mean you go every year? He said, well, you know, I'm part of the accounting firm that does the accounting for PGA, and they give me tickets. I've been coming for year after year after year. So what Dick shared with me is he's had this friend for 35, 40, 50, however many years he's had this friend, and he never put out to the world that his bucket list was to go to the Masters. And here he has a friend that gets tickets, and his friend said sometimes they don't even use them. They have extras. Anyone tried to get Masters tickets before? The lottery is rigged, I'm convinced. To play the round there, I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. And honestly, tickets are not that expensive if you could buy them at retail. Retail prices for those tickets, that's why everybody jumps in the lottery to try to get it. They're like $100 a day or something relatively inexpensive. Pimento sandwich, they sell a lot of those. They're $3. A beer, $4. Like iced tea, $2. I think I spent $50 on food that day. Spent about $500 on merchandise, but that's a whole different conversation. Okay, does this help start to connect the dots with your strengths? You're saying, how in the world is he going to get through all this stuff? Promise we will. We'll move fast. All right, ahas from this chapter. Knowing your strengths. How much time do you have to dedicate to figure out what you're good at? 10,000 to master something. 10,000 hours on average to master something. How many hours is that a year if you work full-time at something? Yeah, you work roughly 2,000 hours if you work a normal, which none of us work a normal job, so we probably get there faster. But if you did something 40 hours a week for 5 years, you'd have a level of mastery. If you're willing to do that in a shorter amount of time, you get to mastery faster. By the way, there's not a shortcut to mastery. This may sound backwards, but we're going to get to it in a second anyway. One of the biggest downfalls that keeps people from getting to mastery is natural ability. And I mean like naturally good at something. Being naturally good at something is going to really mess up the 80-20 principle. It's really going to mess up when we get to E to P. It's going to cause you to have to think differently. I had the experience of working with somebody that had never failed before. They were a top couple in their class when they graduated. They were a top at this. They were a top salesperson. They were a top real estate agent, and they became a team leader. And in the team leader role, you get told no 3 out of 4 times if you're really successful. Imagine for those of you that list real estate, 3 out of 4 times, the seller says, no, I won't list with you. How would that feel? How many no's would it take before you're thinking about, maybe this isn't for me? By the way, for those of you that run teams, if you've got people in your teams that are getting no 3 out of 4 times, we got to talk. As a real estate agent, that's not the average you want, but as a team leader, that's normal. And it took this team leader a really long time to make peace with the word no. Their natural ceiling was really high everywhere else. I worked with another team leader, and I'm not going to give you names because I want to protect them just in case you might know them, and I do keep this confidential. And they didn't have a high level of natural ability for virtually anything. And they were one of the most successful team leaders I've ever met. Do you know why? Because they adopted a model right away. They realized that they weren't naturally good at this. They needed to change what they were doing, and they just followed a model. Some of our top agents in our entire company are not naturally good salespeople. Not at all. But what they're really good at is following a model. Ever take a class with Andy Peters? Anyone know Andy Peters? Okay, cool, good. Then I'll pick on Andy. He's a wonderful guy. Andy and his wife Leslie run a team in Atlanta, Georgia. Did about 65 or so million last year. They net $1 million in 2018 for the first time. They grossed $1 million for 2016 for the first time. Andy sold water coolers before he sold real estate. He had to sell between 25 and 30 water coolers per month. It was his dad's company in order to maintain his quota. He made a really good income and he got out of that business to join his wife's sales business, and they failed their way forward, and then they read MREA. They applied the 36 touch principles in MREA and they absolutely mastered it. Andy now owns 3 market centers in the greater Atlanta area. They'll close more than $3 billion in real estate this year, and they have 1,350 agents. He just signed a business center lease last week on the first bilingual market center in Georgia. He didn't get into business until like 7 years ago. How did he get there so fast? He is really talented. He is really smart, but he had no real estate knowledge. None. What did he do? He read the book and he actually followed it. How many copies of that book have been sold? Take a guess. What do you think? How many real estate agents are there right now? Absolutely. How many? How many National Association of Realtors members are we at? Any guess? I think we're like 1.5, 1.6, probably in that ball. Do you know that's the number? You might be right. Awesome, 1.6. We're going to go with that. By the way, they've sold more than 1.6 million copies of the Red Book, MREA. How come not everybody's a millionaire? We're reading it, they're selling it, and not everyone's following the model. Or maybe like me, I had read it 3 times and didn't even know who Gary Keller was, and there's a guest, and I'm applying my own version of that model to see if it works for me. I mean, what does this guy know out of Texas? He has no idea. He's only on his way to becoming a billionaire at that point. And yet I adopted my own. I wanted to be creative. That was really dumb on my part. I heard an instructor say before, they paid the dumb tax. I paid a whole bunch of dumb tax. I hope you can learn from it today. All right, 80-20. There's a predictable pattern everywhere in the world, in life, called the 80-20 principle. What it really means is 80% of the results come from 20% of your activities. You wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time. I found that out for this trip. I taught in Memorial yesterday and here today, and I'm pretty sure I packed exactly what I took to family reunion. Now, it might be because it's the first time I put on pants since family reunion that have buttons, that aren't sweat or shorts. And yet the reality is you end up wearing the same thing pretty often. You probably spend 80% of your time in 20% of your house. You probably spend 80% of time with 20% of the people you know. 20% of real estate agents sell 80% of the real estate. It's a lot of this room. You're selling 80% of the real estate. What does that mean for the other 80% of agents? They're fighting over the 20% that's left. So the 80-20 principle works both ways. There are 80% of your competitors that's fighting for the small slice of the pie, while there's very few people competing for the big slice. That's the imbalance that they're referring to in the 80-20 principle. The key is big rocks. So doing the big rocks first. I'm going to make this as appropriate as I can, and there's wine in the back soon, so this is fine. So imagine an instructor comes in the room, or professor, and he's got a big bowl here and a big bowl here. Good so far? You can visualize this. I know, super easy. Next to this one, he has a big thing of bricks. Then he's got golf balls, bag of sand, 6-pack of beer. Other side, bricks, golf balls, sand, beer. Good so far? Easy to remember. All right, he starts on this side, and he takes a beer, and he dumps it into the bowl. And then he grabs the sand, dumps it in the bowl. Then he grabs the golf balls, dumps it in the bowl. By the time he gets to the bricks, what happens? Makes a mess. He goes to this side, he puts the bricks in first, then he adds some golf balls, some sand, and there's still room for some of the beer. He shares with the room, if you focus on the beer first, you're not going to have time to go to the beach, you're not going to have time to play golf, and you're never going to get the most important things done. If you get the most important things done first, you're going to have plenty of time to go golfing with your friends, hang out on the beach, and drink all the beer you want. Does that help? Does order matter? Have you heard that version before? Will it stick? Okay, good. I found myself making it up during one of the classes because I was losing the class. Like, what will they connect well? Beer. Of course they will. How did I know that? Because the event after was at a brewery. Clearly that made sense. All right, so big rocks come first. So we got to figure out what do we need to focus on. So we're going to get back to your list. So we got to get back to that thing that was your goal. And what I want you to think about is what is the one thing from the One Thing book, which I know there's like a visual back there, but I brought my travel edition of that as well. What is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, it puts me on the path towards whatever that thing is that I ultimately want. So I'm going to encourage you tonight, this weekend, write down what are the 5 things that if I focused on those 5, maybe 10 things, it would move me towards that path. Well, that's not 1, that's 10. Then I want you to look at the 10 and really just circle those that are the big rocks, those important ones. And then I want you to get even smarter, and then what you circled, just pick one. We already modeled this out in the class, and you may not have realized it. I went through Gary's questions with you, and what did I have you do at the end of Gary's questions? Interesting. That was 1 out of the 10. What did I have you do next? After you picked one. Clearly everybody's playing along. And then we pulled out our phones or our calendars, remember, and we put in the 30 minutes that we were going to do it. That's the hyper focus, and clearly all of you put it in your calendars, and it must be really important to you. But you put it on your calendar, and that's the one focus. That's the small domino. That was the model that I hope that you got to see out of that. Does that make sense? Okay, so part of your homework from this, in order to keep it moving, will be to go even smaller in your thinking. What that means is more focused in your thinking in order to take that first step. Did anybody look at your goal and say, I know the first step, it's easy, it's right there? It's probably your first step. We probably all share the same first step, and it's probably the same thing we did for that question. It's pulling out your phone and it's picking a 30-minute slot in which I'm going to take that first action. I had somebody in the class when I taught this back in Clear Lake, and their goal was to be an author. They want to write a book. What do you think his first step was in order to write a book? He had the idea, and that's a great start. Get an idea, chapters, okay? We went through all that. Keep going. Learn how to write a book. Okay, what will be the fastest way to do that? Could be. Could be. Keep going. Yeah, say that out loud. That was the one thing that he scheduled, to go find someone that had written a book and go talk to them. That way he could take their resources, their models, their systems, and see if they'd work for his goal. Does that help? You're going to say something too. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Be around the people that you're going to have the same experience with. So anything you wrote down, did anybody write down something that's never been done before? It's okay if you did. Did anybody write down something that's never been done before? I'll wait. It's okay. I had a class and somebody said, I wrote down something that's never been done before. So what do? Said, great, let's go find somebody else that did something no one's ever done before. And that's your model. How do they do something? Gary Keller built a company that no one's ever built before. No one's ever had a real estate company with 180,000+ agents. So as long as your goal's not bigger than that, and even if it is, then you go talk to somebody that's done it to find out how do they do something for the first time. Does that help? It's almost always a personal relationship, something you're going to read, something you're going to experience. It'll probably be that first step. But it goes back to the smallest domino. What are the 30 minutes or an hour that you're going to put on your calendar in the next 7 days? Okay, excerpt from the one thing. Great, we just did that. We're going to do a success list. That's really what we just defined, not a to-do list, and ultimately get down to the one thing. Let's see, will this work today? Oh, it does. Cool. The one thing. It took these 5, took the 1 and made 5 for that 1, took 1 from that, made 5 from that, and then took the most important one. This was all about running a marathon, the example they use in the materials. Extreme Pareto, we just talked about. 411. Anybody use a 411 on a regular basis? Cool. It is the one. Awesome. Thank you. Man, I'm about to lose faith. No. I appreciate the honesty, to be totally honest. I'm going to slide out of the way. A 411 is all about personal goals. You may not have heard this version of this before. A 411 is about personal goals. A GPS or a 135 is about your business goals. They are different. But you're saying, well, wait, my 411 has business things on it. I get it. Start with the personal side. That's what it's all about. Then you figure out what does the business need to do in order to achieve the personal things. My first year in the business, my goal was to sell $1 million a month. I was single, 23, and just moved to Philadelphia. What was selling $1 million a month tied to? Where did I pull that number? I wish it was the air. I think it was somewhere else. It was just made up. I was 23 and single. I was out of college. I didn't have college debt. I worked through college to make sure it was paid for. My parents contributed as much as they possibly could and really allowed me to leave college with no college debt. My rent was $700 a month. I didn't have anything tied to $1 million a month selling real estate. Quite frankly, I'm probably grateful I didn't do that in retrospect. Nothing good could have come out of that without a purpose behind it. So what I'd encourage you to do is whatever that purpose is, define that personal goal first. Now, had I had debts to accomplish, had I had a family, had I had other expenses that I need to do, then maybe I could have done that, but I didn't have the drive to just work for work's sake. Gary Keller did not finish his first year in the real estate business as Rookie of the Year. He was runner-up. Why? Because he hit his goal and he stopped. I did the same thing. He hit his goal and he said, I'm good. I want to go enjoy Christmas with my family. And there's nothing wrong with that. So when he asked that question, when is enough for you? That's been in his head since he was 23, 24 years old. All right, questions about 411? It only works if you use it. It's okay if you have 52 versions of the 411 by the end of the year. Because not everything on that is actually going to get checked off in a monthly basis. So some of those things are going to take longer to achieve than others. So if you have 52 versions, just do it. The other mistake I see agents make, and leaders make for that matter, they attempt to get it right. I'll work on my 411 when I get it right. You don't understand. I'm still working on my first draft of my business plan. Don't get it right. Just get it done. It'll get right over time. Here's an example. Great. There's an example. Can I just be honest? I don't like this version of it. I like the version from theonething.com. So if you go to theonething.com, all the way at the bottom, free stuff, or resources, I think it's still called free stuff. There is a version that just has one line down the center. God, we got a whiteboard today, so I can do this. It looks like this. And it says personal, business. And it's got my year, it's got my month, and it's got my 4 weeks. And it's so incredibly simple because it says personal, business. That's it. I don't need personal, financial. For me, this is too much. And I don't even think you're going to see this version anywhere else anymore. We're going to a more simplified version. Simple is better. Questions, concerns? You good? No one's left yet that hasn't come back. So that's good. All right, we're going to keep going. People think there's never enough time to be successful, but when you block it, there actually is. This is unfortunately incredibly true. I fought time blocking for a really long time because I wanted flexibility. When I finally accepted time blocking, I got flexibility. It's incredible how that actually works. So when you focus on the things that matter the most first, you actually get a high level of flexibility. My wife asked me the other day, she said, did you fire a bunch of clients? I feel like you're around a lot. No, I changed my schedule. I don't have any calls on Fridays after 11 o'clock. I don't have any calls on Thursdays after 1 o'clock. I have a full schedule. Mondays are busy, Tuesdays are busy, Wednesdays are busy. Thursdays are busy up until about 1. Fridays are sort of busy up until about 11. So that every Friday I can go pick up my son from school. He has a half day, he's in kindergarten. And our schools only have half days for kindergarten. He should go all day, but that's besides the point. So I get to pick him up every Friday. And his first question every Friday when I pick him up is what? Yep, what are we doing? And now it's, can we go get sushi? You are 5. I didn't have sushi till I was like 25. Yeah, I know. He's going to start ordering from school if I'm not careful. And he's big. I'm going to have to work till I'm 100 to feed him. Okay, any questions on the truth? Good. Time blocking habits, great. We can go through that. Protect your time, have help. The truth is important. The world doesn't care. So block your time. You're responsible for it, no one else. Build your bunker, store provisions, great. What are your ahas from the 80-20 principle? Focus on those big rocks so you can enjoy golf, beach, and beer. It is. It is absolutely. By the way, you only get one 411 that you get to live off of at a time. Each one of your businesses can have its own GPS or 135. This is a question I had for Jay Papasan. We were at the goal setting retreat, and I asked him, I said, okay, so how many 411s can I have? He said, how many humans are you? What do you mean? He said, you're one person, right? I said, yeah. He said, good, because if you're not, that's a whole different conversation we need to have with a professional. So as long as you are one person, you only get one 411. He said, how many businesses do you have? At the time, I was working on 5 or 6 businesses. He said, great, each one of those can have its own GPS. I ended up building a GPS one year, or a 135, we call it for short, in order to run a 5K. At that point, I had never run a 5K. I've run a lot. I've played sports. The reason I wrote a GPS that year is my MCA, and I was still a team leader, my MCA and I were going to run a 5K together. So what was the big goal on my GPS? Yep. It just said, beat Michelle. We're really good friends. Her husband, my wife, the 4 of us hang out. We're great friends together. We go to concerts, enjoy each other's company. And my goal was, I'm not going to lose. That's just not, so it said beat Michelle. Then I worked with a running coach to come up with what my priorities were and my strategies. And I know this sounds crazy, but I wasn't going to lose. I would have tripped her. I would have probably died on the course before I was going to lose to Michelle, because I never would have heard the end of it. And the track that we ran was great. It was at Philadelphia, right by the Art Museum. You ran up Kelly Drive and you ran partially back, or West River Drive, and turned around and came back. So as you're coming back, you're on the other side of the road and you see people. And I remember the moment that I saw her running the other way and I was already past her. I probably had the biggest goofy smile. It was 18 degrees outside. It was in November. I was freezing and I was so happy at that moment that she was behind me, because I knew the GPS worked. One other note on GPS before we move on. You may find that you don't check everything off of that GPS and you still hit your big goal. We had a business that we had a GPS, and at the end of the year, we looked at our big goal and we accomplished it. And we looked at GPS and like, we missed like 60% of what was on here. We still hit our big goal. Why did that happen? Or how did that happen? We were focused on those things that mattered the most, and they were big enough that they were going to hit our goal anyway. So we had really big activities that were going to ensure we hit the goal. This book, it is a Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller. How do you get a best-selling book on Wall Street Journal? What's the process? Anybody know? Pre-sales. Yep. At the time they wrote the book, they had to pre-sell 40,000 copies. So the team that wrote the book brought to Gary a plan to sell 40,000 copies. To which Gary respectfully pushed back the plan and said, that won't work. Write a plan that is to sell 100,000 copies. And they built a plan, and they had activities around selling 100,000. Ultimately, they pre-sold 49,000 copies. What would have happened if they would have had a plan to only sell 40,000? That little circle wouldn't exist. It wouldn't say #1 Wall Street Journal bestseller. It would have been just another book. But because they had a big action plan, even though they missed by nearly 50%, they still exceeded their goal, their actual goal. That's the point of stretch goals. Does that help? Okay. E to P. Here's where being talented is not in your favor. We're going to look at the ceiling of achievement. So E is entrepreneurial, P is purposeful. Maybe you're the only one that's ever met an agent like this, but I'm going to give you an example. Nope, didn't drop it. So I had the privilege as a team leader to work with this agent, and his ceiling of achievement was 100 million in sales. That was the ceiling of achievement. He had no models, no systems, except for work hard, and he did 100 million or thereabouts every year for 10 years in a row. The bottom part of this E, he was actually entrepreneurial in order to achieve that. The first 6 months in the business, he didn't tell a single person he was selling real estate. And then for 10 years in a row, did a round, like worked his way up to 100 million, but could not get past it. The other part he couldn't get past, 80 hours a week. Consistently working 80 hours a week. Brought in help, brought in admins, brought in team members, 3 young girls. He has Irish triplets. You know what that is? I didn't know it was a thing. He had a daughter, and then 11 months later, they had twins. He had 3 2-year-olds at the exact same time. And I'm convinced 3 is harder, actually, at that. 3 years old. Maybe it's because I have a 3-year-old. He had 3 3-year-olds. He has 3 girls going insane. His wife's a doctor, and he's working 80 hours a week. They have full-time help that live in their house. 3 years ago, and I'm not going to use his name, even though he just recently joined KW like in the last couple of weeks. We'll keep it safe. 3 years ago, he and I got in a plane together and we flew to Austin. Gary was kind enough to fly us down to Austin and spend the morning with Gary. We had to spend the morning with Gary, Josh Team, who was our president at the time of the company, and Jason Abrams, who was somebody we didn't know, just sitting in the corner taking notes. And I say that all due respect to Jason, but he was literally a corner figure at that point, just taking notes for this meeting. So we get into Austin, our meeting's at 8:30 in the morning. Anybody been to KWRI in Austin? Yeah, so we walked in, we went to like the lobby area, we're waiting. They gave us some name to put in for one of the assistants who was gonna come meet us. And who walks in at 8:35? Gary, with his backpack on and his cup of tea that looked eerily like this. He walks in with his cup of tea, he's like, hey guys, come on. We hop in the elevator with Gary, we went up to his secret office on the 2nd floor, and it was just kind of comfortable. There were just chairs, it wasn't set up for anything, there was coffee and tea in the corner, whatever we wanted, just super, super comfortable. And Gary introduced us to his friends, Josh and Jason. He offered the recruit a cup of tea. The recruit said, I don't drink tea. Gary said, well, do you want a sip of mine? This is pre-pandemic. So I just want you to picture that for a second. Here's this recruit that's been at Berkshire Hathaway for 10 years of his life. The billionaire owner of Keller Williams, who he just met for the first time, is handing him his beverage. What's Gary doing? He's very much saying, I'm not better than you. In fact, here, drink from my cup. I'm fine. I'm not worried. We're equals here. Then Gary spent 4 hours of his time with us the week before family reunion. Do you think Gary's busy the week before family reunion? Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's real busy. He's got a lot going on. He didn't look at his cell phone a single time. He didn't leave for any reason. He just spent time with us. And we sat like this, him and I, while Gary had a conversation that was very conversational. I had a whole bunch of coffee that morning. It was 4 hours. I had to stand up and excuse myself so that I didn't really embarrass myself in front of Gary Keller, like to use the restroom, and he didn't even notice or care. It was just fine. It was that kind of comfortable environment. Point of that story is Gary controls his schedule. We had 3 hours scheduled with him, and I'm at one point going, oh crap, we're gonna miss our flight. It's gonna be that long that he has no end in sight. And I got to hear a great conversation from Gary and him sharing everything with us. But he shared with us that he has a black book that he carries around in his backpack that's not digital, it's paper, and he looks at a month at a glance. So he owns the largest real estate company that's a technology company that's ever existed, and he has a paper notebook. And the recruit starts laughing, and he pulls out his paper notebook too. And Gary said when he sees that whole book, he can make decisions on a bigger picture of his life. If you look at your phone alone, you're only seeing a keyhole. When he looks at a month at a time, he can make better decisions. Whose schedule's worth more money, Gary's or mine? It's Gary's. Sorry, I spoiled that for all of you. You thought I was a billionaire. No, it's Gary's. His schedule makes more money and he controls it. No one controls the schedule except for him. All right, fast forward. Back to E to P. We come back. Recruit's excited. Saturday morning, we fly home. Or I'm sorry, Friday, right after that, we fly home. We get to Saturday morning, he collapses. 46, 7 at the time, collapses. Needs a quadruple bypass. Now, grateful he's alive. I shared with you he joined. It took him 3 years after that to join. What happened? His body couldn't keep up. This was unsustainable. 100 million in 80 hours, absolutely unsustainable. I saw the OP, and I'm still very good friends. He called me after he made the move. It was great to connect with him. I saw the OP at Family Reunion. I said, how's he doing? I don't want to use his name because it's very memorable. And he said, he is a hot mess. He's used other colorful language around that too. He's also from Philadelphia. His business is so much worse than I thought. And we're going to help him. We're going to make things better. In order for him to go up to this next level, by the way, his next level is not 200 million. He's already done that at this point. He hit right around 200 million last year because the market helped. He didn't sell more houses. The market was great. His goal, let's just get to 40 hours. For him, that's purposeful. I just want to get down to 40 hours. Does that help E to P? The challenge he runs into is his ceiling of achievement is so stinking high that he never had to adopt a model until his heart decided he did. Okay, ahas in this chapter. The next ceiling is often not about money. I would even maybe add to that. It's often about quality of life once you reach a certain level. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Gary shared that with the room. If you weren't in he had a CEO mastermind in Epcot the Friday before Family Reunion, and we had the privilege to be in that room together and shared with the room that it's all about leverage. You don't need more leads. You need more leverage to get your life back because you just worked the most insane year of your life, likely you've all worked. Did anybody else feel that in the last year? All right, let's just be honest. For how many was it really difficult to be here today because you're so busy? Okay, that's a different conversation than I expected. I saw the board and like the things that are going on. I get to look at your numbers, by the way. I am a coach for this market center. I have open books. I can see everything. I know you're busy. I know you're productive agents. And for some of you, the busiest you've ever been in real estate and running all over the place. So number one, I appreciate you choosing to take time for yourselves here. But the second is we got to find you some help. That's the E to P conversation. All right, learning-based action plan. We're going to go through this really quick. An individual that's learning-based is somebody that has made a decision that they want to use effective learning to actually move their lives forward in some usable fashion. This is not, I want to be a great Jeopardy player. This is, I want to make specific choices on what I want to get better at. So write down growth plan. What's on your growth plan? I have a client that's had on his growth plan to learn Spanish for years. He wants to be bilingual, wants to learn Spanish. Every week, at some point in our conversation, we have a conversation about how are you making progress with learning Spanish. What do you think he says every single week? Haven't found anything that'll work for me yet. Haven't done it, not yet. No, not yet. No, I did this though, and I did this, and I checked this off. Haven't done that yet. So finally, this past Saturday, I got frustrated. Thursday, we just got done our call. I, as his coach, got frustrated, which if those of you that have coaches, your coaches sometimes want more for you than you want for yourselves, just as a heads up. I want this guy to get off his butt and learn Spanish. He told me it's important to him. I'm not telling him it's important to him. So I went on Amazon and I ordered him a word of the day or a phrase of the day. So now sitting on his desk, he's got a calendar that every day he can see the phrase of what it is. Now you may be thinking, yeah, what stops him from doing that? I had to order myself one as well as his coach. So now every day I've got to look at a Spanish phrase that wasn't even on my goal list so that I could say, hey, agent, leader, what word did you learn today? What phrase did you learn today so that we can be accountable together? So at times, you've got to find out whatever that one thing is you need to learn, and you might need to bring in some help in order for you to achieve that. I'm actually incredibly grateful that I had the opportunity to do that as his coach, because now it's going to make me more accountable to actually doing something too. So even though it wasn't one of my goals, I don't know about you, I've adopted other people's goals as my own in the past. How many of you now want to go to the Masters because I talked about it? Not a blade of grass was out of place. My wife wore sandals, and they told us, like, you're probably not going to get in with sandals. She might have to go buy shoes. Like, we just flew in this morning. Where do we go in Augusta to buy anything? And thankfully, practice round was the day we went, which was not disappointing because we got to get even closer to the players. And they let her in, and she walked over, and the first thing she did was kick her sandals off just to step on the grass. And she said it was more magical than you can experience. Okay. Learning based. So knowing what do you need to learn in order to move forward in that goal. So here's a good version of a growth plan that may be helpful for you. One personal, one professional thing per month. One personal, one professional that are actually in alignment with what your goals are. What's the one class you're going to achieve? You're all here. Is this moving you towards something? Maybe. It'll be up to you if it is or not, based on the action you take from it, and yet it could be part of your growth plan. For some of you, it's going to be masterminds next month, professionally. For some of you, it might be a vacation that's that personal. It might be, I want to go to a class and learn how to salsa dance. Somebody shared that with me in my last session. They really want to learn how to salsa dance. Cool. What are you doing towards that? If I looked at your growth plan, would I have any idea that that's actually part of your growth plan? And they said, well, no. But I really want to do it. It's really important to me. It's like, great, let me see your calendar. Where in your calendar has salsa dancing on it? Where do you think it existed? Only in their head. And as a result, nothing happened. It wasn't until they took their first step. So back to learning base, you've got to actually know what you want to know. All right, here's the 4 level of competency, and this is going to maybe explain everything you need to know about me. Level 1, unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I don't know. Level 2, conscious incompetence. Now I know what I don't know. Level 3, conscious competence. Now I know what I know. And level 4 is unconscious competence. That is, I don't even think about it anymore. It just happens. And if you're fluent in other languages, okay, great. You probably don't have to think all that much before the other language comes right out. Is that accurate? And sometimes they happen at the same time. I get it. I speak like 3 different languages at the same time, and the only one I actually know is English. It still gets messed up. Anybody have small kids that you're around on a regular basis? Yeah, so I'm slightly fluent in Bluey these days. Okay, so moving through this, and this will explain more about me. One year, I had a guy in my elementary school that his dad owned an oil company in New Jersey. That's where I was. Like, wow, where was I? New Jersey. And I know immediately you thought, wow, New Jersey, I think of oil. Owned an oil company, a petroleum company in New Jersey. Did quite well. Had a pretty great lifestyle, and he was extraordinarily generous. And one of the things he gave us, and we had no idea at that time, but one of the things he gifted to the community was he was going to sponsor a baseball league. And as a result of doing that, they allowed him to sponsor, like he put his name on one shirt, like his company. No idea until years later how extraordinarily wealthy and generous this gentleman was. So long story short, I'm in the elementary school class with his son, and he's like, hey, want to come play baseball? My dad's got this thing, we should come play. I played up until that point soccer. I played soccer before and after that. No offense to baseball, I just didn't get it. I didn't mind watching it, but I didn't really want to play it. For me, it was a little slow. I liked active movement. Yeah, sorry. There's always one. And I didn't really want to do it. So I was that kid with a borrowed baseball glove and soccer cleats playing baseball. For those of you that ever played baseball or softball or any sport like that, you can imagine I wasn't the best hitter. And I was 12. I already shared with you my dad's 21 years older than I am. So at 12, he's 33. And in great shape at 33. In retrospect, 8 years younger than I am now. So he's really in great shape at 33. And really didn't want to see his son suck at baseball. So we were lower middle class, and we didn't get to go to batting cages. Yet I lived really close to a university that we could walk to, and they had a batting cage. They had the kind of cage that you just pitch. that somebody pitches the ball at you and there's a cage so that they don't get hit by the bat or by the ball, which was not a concern because I wasn't making contact. But anyway, we go there. So we borrowed a bat from a friend of mine that lived around the corner. We took the bat, we took the ball, we took the glove. What did we not take? Yeah, are you a mom by chance? It's always the mom that gives the right answer. We didn't bring the helmet. We didn't have one of those. So, yeah, exactly. So one of the pitches got a little bit away from my dad and caught me in the back of the head. I told you that would explain a lot about the class so far. And I went down. And I came back up. It was totally fine. I don't think my mom knows this story to this day. And they're still married, so I'm going to keep it that way. But the reality was, after that, we decided that was enough for the day. And I went to the next game, and I was 4 for 4. And the game after that, I was 3 for 4. And the game after that, I was 5 for 5. And the game after that. And all of a sudden, I go from this kid that sucks to going on the All-Star. I still didn't like baseball, to be totally honest. But ended up on the All-Star team that year. What changed at that moment when I got hit in the head? I didn't know that I was closing my eyes when the ball came. And I was no longer afraid of a 12-year-old throwing the ball after my dad had been throwing it arguably as hard as he could at his 12-year-old son. I'm the oldest, so he didn't know better. So what happened is I went from unconscious incompetence. I didn't know what I didn't know till suddenly I knew what I didn't know and I can make the adjustment. So where the learning actually happens here on this chart is somewhere right here in between these two. I actually have to know what I don't know in order to know it. Does that make sense? Okay, so back to your goal. What do you not know about it? And how do you fill that void? And the way you do that is by finding the right classes, teachers, mentors, podcasts, books, masterminds, events, things like we're in today, each other, to find out what are those practices that I actually need to know. They're going to help take me to the next level. KW has a bunch of things, I had the privilege, as mentioned, to be a coach. I also get the privilege to be a head coach, which to me, I feel like I just keep accidentally picking the right straw and somebody just keeps saying yes. So as a head coach, we get extra time with people. Just means more phone calls. We get to actually have an impact on more lives, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And one of the things that I learned in the last week, did you know that we have a whole program for deaf and hard of hearing called KW Signs? The reason I mentioned that I'm a head coach is I should have known that. I shouldn't have found out last week about it. It's not new. It's called KW Signs. It's for deaf and hard of hearing. It's a whole bunch of resources for that community in order for you to be a better agent to serve deaf and hard of hearing community. We also have a new designation called Agents of Distinction. How many of you are familiar with Agents of Distinction? Okay, it's a certification. This one costs money. It was $299, self-paced course, all about how to work with people that are different than you in every way. Whether that's race, religion, whether that's they're hard of hearing or deaf, whether the English is their second, third, fourth, not language at all, whether they have disabilities, whether they have kids that have disabilities, whether they're from a different community inside of our communities, and it teaches you how to navigate those waters working with somebody different than you. I'd highly recommend it. I learned a ton. Fastest growing demographic and first-time homebuyers in the US is who? Say it out loud. 50% of first-time homebuyers in the last decade have been from the Hispanic and Latino community. The estimation in the next 20 years, that number will go to 70%. So again, how many of you are bilingual, English and Spanish? I will do that. So several of you are bilingual. Out of curiosity, how many of you have great bilingual team members? Meaning that you've got a great title person, you've got a great loan officer, and you've got several choices, because that's going to be a huge part of our marketplace for the next 20 years and beyond. Are there any other, go ahead, you have something? Oh, cool, you've got that, great, thank you. By the way, I already mentioned, I barely speak English. So that Spanish calendar was a gift to myself as well of, at MAPS, how many Spanish speaking coaches do we have? One. Yep, everybody knows Carlos. Just one. We only have one coach that is fluent in Spanish. So out of curiosity, something to think about on your growth plan, those of you that are bilingual and those of you that are not bilingual as well, is becoming a coach on your growth plan. Did you ever think about it before? Okay. All right, classes, curriculum, books we can read. These are all Gary and Jay's books and some others. There's a lot of other books. You've probably heard this before, but I'll say it again. 5 years from now will ultimately be determined by the books you read, the people you spend time with, the things you listen to, the things you watch. That'll determine the person that you're going to become in the next 5 years. So choose books wisely, decide what you want to be a master at. Can I give you a couple today that aren't on this list? These are all books that I'm either reading or have read. First one is, for those of you thinking about hiring this year, No Rules Rules. If you're thinking about building an organization that requires a team, No Rules Rules by Reed Hastings. Who's Reed Hastings? All of you give Reed money every month. I'm guessing. I'm willing to be wrong here. You all give Reed Hastings money every month. Do you know what company he owns? Netflix. Reed Hastings, founder of Netflix. This is all about the culture of their company and how to build a company that has very few rules, to say the least. One of the statements in the book, which burned in my brain, somebody said, "Do you have a dress code?" He said, "Nope, and no one's ever come naked." Doesn't need it. He said, "What do we set rules for that are pointless?" All right, second book, Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. Die with Zero. I know, morbid title. Great book. The idea behind this book is if you want to give to people, don't wait until your estate gets to make decisions that you don't get to make. And Bill uses the example of his own father, who, when he died, had $500,000. Well, he had $500,000 earmarked to give when he died. Unfortunately, the last 30 days of his life, he had to spend in the hospital, and it cost $10,000 a day to get the treatment that his father needed. So in the first, how many days was that money gone? Yep. All the money was gone. Whatever the math worked out, it was like 10 days, the money was gone. By the way, he still lived another 10 or 20 days and magically still got treatment, even without the money. Had he made the decision to give away the money while he was alive, he could have made a bigger impact. That's the idea behind Die with Zero. I don't care if you agree or disagree, it's just a book. And then number 3, this is the most recent one that I personally have read, and it is called Making Numbers Count. What I'm learning from this book is we do a really great job of talking about numbers, and we do a really bad job about telling them in a fashion in which the average person can understand it. It's by Chip Heath. Making Numbers Count by Chip Heath. Easy, incredibly easy read. Here's an example. When I tell you 1 out of a million, what do you think of? High odds or low odds? High odds. 1 out of a million. If I told you today, you've got a 1 out of a million chance of today being your last day. Got morbid, I get it. But 1 out of a million. When I say 7 out of a million, what do you think? If I told you you've got a 7 out of a million chance of dying by jumping out of a plane skydiving, how does that sound? Starts to sound stupid, right? Or exciting, depending on who you might be. My brother's going skydiving next week, I think. Here's another way to look at those same numbers. Anyone ever read or watch Harry Potter? Or maybe your kids or grandkids, or you've got people in your world that have. Okay, if you took all 7 Harry Potter novels and put them up on the wall on a bookshelf, and you remove the second one, so you've got 6 left, there's approximately 1 million words in those 6 books that we've got left on the shelf. If I grabbed one at random, opened to a random page, and circled a random word, closed it up, put it back on the bookshelf, what's the likelihood of you going and selecting that same book, same page, same word as the first one you looked at? 1 out of a million. Okay, now I circled 7 words throughout the 6 books. Same concept. There's still very little likelihood that you're ever going to stumble as your first guess on one of those words. Does that make sense? Same odds told in a totally different way. Remember last year when there was that boat that was stuck, or ship that was stuck blocking the canal? How big was that boat? Nobody remembers. Big enough to block a canal. quarter mile long. How come none of us remember quarter mile? Just don't. It's just not part of who we are. I'm going to give you another way to think about it. That same boat was the exact same length, or thereabouts, as the Empire State Building laying on its side. Does that give you more of a perspective? So is the Empire State Building laying on its side blocking the canal, minus a little tip on the top of the Empire State Building, the building itself. Okay, which one was more powerful and you think will stick in your brain longer? The Empire State Building or the quarter mile long ship? If you said quarter mile long ship, that's totally cool. You may be a numbers oriented person and most of your database has no idea what you're talking about. Or they don't remember what you're talking about. Most of your database, the thing that'll stick in your head will be the Empire State Building laying on its side, blocking a canal. Does that help? What does that have to do with mindset? Best way to communicate with somebody is the way they want to be communicated with. Whatever that is. And the problem with knowledge that's not in our materials, once you know something, you assume everybody else knows that thing too. Whoops, that's the problem with knowledge. So what are you taking? What do you want to experience? All right, coaching, we have a bunch of that. We've got some coaches in this room. I get to, have a colleague in this room as Chad, as a fellow coach, and always humbling to be in the room with other coaches and leaders. There's a lot of really talented people at MAPS. So if it's on your radar, something you want to consider, talk to Chad, talk to Nimesh, talk to me after. I'm here. All right, what are your ahas from this chapter? Learning based. Talk to people the way they want to be talked to. One more. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's such a great point that we assume that everybody else must also know this too, so it prevents us from sharing it. By the way, I had some mindset coming into this today. I assumed that every person in this room had been through this class before. Would that have been a fair assumption? And I believe you're the only gentleman that was in the class before. And is this exactly the same as it was 3 weeks ago, or however long it was you took it? Okay, cool. I was gonna say, uh-oh, but am I doing it wrong? Because you're a different person, even after a couple weeks. So every time you take it, it'll be a little bit different. And I'm probably bringing a different perspective, and he probably, or whoever taught it, probably different. It's always gonna hit differently. So I'd encourage you to take things over and over and over again. All right, removing your limiting beliefs. Everybody raise your right hand as high as you can. Okay, raise it a little higher. All right, put your hands down. What just happened? You stretched, which is great, and you had a little bit more to give. So I asked you to raise it as high as you could, and you thought you did until I asked you to raise it higher, and there was a little bit more. Is that a limiting belief or a version of one? Or maybe you just didn't want to look stupid. But you're all doing it. Nobody looked dumb if you're all doing it. So the point of that is we all have them. We all have limiting beliefs. High achievers just tend to remove them faster. I had a coach in my world that used to ask the question, what's great about that? I'd bring him something negative or something I was experiencing, and he'd say, great, what's great about that? But you don't understand, I have an hour and 10-minute commute each way. That's like 48 days a year I'm spending in the car driving to a market center. By the way, first year, we opened a business center that was another 25 minutes past the market center in the wrong direction. Apparently, I didn't own a map when I said yes to this gig. Now I'm going an hour and a half or more each way to go to this business center. And he said, what's great about it? And it took initially me saying a strong word that had a couple letters, 4 to be exact, you don't know what you're talking about, until I finally realized that what was great about that is I got to have education time for myself. 1 day of full education day per week that I got to listen to books and podcasts and actually grow as a human being 1 full education day a week, 48 full days a year that no one bothered me. And it took somebody saying, what's great about that? So that's one way to kind of think about removing limiting beliefs. So I just want you to think back, when was the time in which you removed a limiting belief? Do you remember one you had? They'll never list with me. They'll never sell their house. They'll never come to this company. Man, I hear that all the time. That guy at 100 million, I recruited him for 8 years. He just joined the company a couple weeks ago. 8 years. 4 team leaders have been there since then. He went to see Gary 3 years ago, and Gary couldn't do it. I realized we're recording that. Gary could do it, I guess. 3 years ago. It took 3 years after meeting face-to-face with Gary for 4 hours. How many times do you think people told me he's never coming? You don't get it. He's never coming. No, he's never joining. He's never joining. And last year he did just over 200 million, his final year at Berkshire Hathaway. Before he joined, he was in the top 10 in the entire country for that company. Unfortunately, no one's heard that story yet, which is a whole different conversation that I'm battling with the way we tell our stories and our numbers. We should all know about that because that impacts all of us in a positive way. I'd love to go on a listing appointment and find out that a seller was also interviewing somebody else at that company and just say, hey, out of curiosity, you probably don't follow real estate news. Did you know that the number 8 Berkshire Hathaway agent in the world just joined KW? You're probably wondering why. What did I just do to that competitor without saying anything bad about him? What happens when they now meet with a Berkshire Hathaway agent? Well, now that seller's got, or that Berkshire Hathaway agent, they have an uphill battle to overcome because some KW agent just said, did you know the number 8 agent just joined their company? I don't know, thought process around it. Stories we tell matter if they're true. Keep them true, which is absolutely true. So again, mindset, removing your limiting beliefs. We all have them. Get rid of them. Control that second thought. All right, ahas. So many of you right now are just saying, my limiting belief is you're going to get through these materials at the time you told us you will. I will. But go ahead. I cut somebody off that was going to share an aha. What's your aha? Give me one. Limiting beliefs. Amazing. That's why training works so well with a trainer. When they say, give me just one more, magically you've got one more in you. Amazing how that works. Mo Anderson told her story of she needed to take 3 listings by a certain day or sell 3 homes by a certain day in order to stay in the real estate business. And magically she did. When you set out those clear boundaries and you have help in your world, you achieve things that you never thought were possible. Any other ahas before I move into the final one? And we're going to actually get to the models of MREA. They do. High achievers remove them faster than others. There's an exercise in the materials at one point that had you write down your limiting belief. Then we all handed out matches and lighters and you set them on fire. Chad told me we're not allowed to do it in this room. So he probably said I could. You got to renovate at some point. It's fine. No, it's absolutely not true. He would have said, go for it. And Krista would have been in here saying, put it out. That's good partnership. Yes, we're going to testing sprinklers today. All right, step 6, be accountable. This is an interesting graph. On the left side, I love this clicker. This is why I travel with it, is ignorance-based. On the right side is reality-based. It all is predicated on when life happens. I won't forget that in January of 2020, I was in Austin for a MAPS models course taught by Jeannie Osnes. And I say that because it's burned in my brain. She said, life doesn't give you a save the date. It was the last couple days in January into the beginning of February. In fact, I think we left on February 1st or 2nd. Why do I remember life doesn't send you a save the date? 6 weeks later, they closed the liquor stores. We have wine and spirit stores in Pennsylvania. They closed them on March 16th, the day before St. Patrick's Day. Do you know how big the Irish population is in Philadelphia? That's when you knew things were bad. That's when I got the, this might be real. This might be a real thing. They just closed the wine and spirit stores the day before St. Patty's Day. By the way, I was here. I was in Houston. I went to Austin, Dallas for our convention, and then 2 weeks later here. I went to the rodeo to see pregnant Maren Morris sing her heart out, presented Monday, Tuesday, flew home Wednesday of that week, the year she was. That was 2 years ago, and then flew home. I knew it was a problem when I went to the airport and I got upgraded on my flight immediately. I had 0 status at that point in my life and immediately got upgraded. And in first class, there were 6 people at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday. That quick, life didn't give us a save the date. I went home, I went into the market center on Thursday. Friday the 13th, they sent our kids home from school and said, bring all your stuff with you. By Monday the 16th, the world was shut down. We had a pub crawl scheduled in my market center on the 17th. They canceled the morning of the 17th because the bar is closed in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. It's called Doylestown. Doesn't it sound Irish? We had shirts made up. It said, oh, Doylestown rules. They finally got to use them 2 weeks ago. Okay, reality happens. How many agents, how many leaders, how many people that are your competitors put their head in the sand and said, you know what, we're just gonna wait till this thing's over and we'll figure it out? How'd that work? We had a local broker that gave the advice in writing to all his agents. It said, just stay home, don't do anything. When this is over, we'll come up with a plan. They're not in business. They are now out of business. They were out of business quite quickly. In the state that I'm in the wonderful Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we were told that we could lose our license if we met a client at any point during the first 90 days of when things locked down. We were not allowed to meet a client at all in person, or you were potentially losing your license. By the way, Pennsylvania, I'm pretty sure I could punch a client in the face and I wouldn't lose my license. But during that period of time, if I went to see a human being, I would lose my license, never to practice real estate again. What did agents do for 90 days? Figured it out. I had an agent in our local marketplace that bought a bunch of little camera lenses that attached to iPhones and to whatever the other non-iPhone users are. Not to pick on anybody. And he sent it to every person in his database that was thinking about selling their home in the next 12 months. And he said, I want you to attach this to your phone and walk around your house and do a walkthrough. It was a wide angle lens. Before everybody else, he sent it out. What happened to his listing inventory? Went way up. Unfortunately, there was a 4-week period which you were not allowed to coordinate showings between a buyer and a seller. It was illegal in the state of Pennsylvania to have an agent reach out to a buyer and seller and tell them they can meet at the home together to go through it. Literally 0 ways to do business. And I had this feeling, well, better see what else I'm good at, because this is done, until we got out of it. So back to reality. We had to seek reality, and we showed up, some of us, as a victim for a second. That first thought was victim. We had to very quickly seek reality, acknowledge it, own it, find solutions, get on with it. Because without that, I would have been whatever that company used to be that's now closed. Does that help? Okay, are you the type of person that lights up the room when you walk in? That would be likely this side. Or the type of person that lights up a room when you walk out? Okay, so not you, yet who on your team, or who do you know that might spend a lifetime becoming a professional victim? Full disclosure, I've got a family member. He's a professional victim. He is. He's exhausting to spend time with him. And as a result, all of these things show up over and over and over and over again. It is nearly impossible for him to go to this side of the equation. Is that February? Okay, I don't know. Yeah, it is the law of attraction. All right, we're gonna get dark for a second. I woke up, not this morning, yesterday morning, in my hotel room, 2 text messages. I woke up at 3 in the morning to look at my phone to see what time it was, because I couldn't see my clock. And I had 4 messages from that person. Unfortunately, they weren't text messages. They were SOS messages. Do you know what that means? That means that he had alerted his phone for an emergency. Do you know what happens when you alert your phone for an emergency if you have an iPhone? Any of your emergency contacts get immediately pinned where you are. So I got emergency contact, he's at my parents' house where he lives. It's my brother. Then I got a second one, emergency contact, hospital, emergency room. Then I looked and I had a missed call from my mom. Then I had a voicemail. 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, I'm on Eastern time. That's still early. That's the victim part. He had done some things he shouldn't have done. Ended up in an ambulance ride to the hospital while my parents were in New Jersey. Every person in my brother's phone that has emergency contact got a notification at 3 o'clock in the morning. What do you think we all thought the rest of the night? Yeah. So then I called my mom. She said he's okay. He overdosed on this type of medicine. We didn't realize he was taking this. I mean, I'd get really personal, but I don't think it's beneficial for the class. Nothing good happened in that world. Now, thankfully, everything's going to be okay. He's on his way to rehab. We didn't know he had been taking painkillers for the last 5 years. Now, we knew he had a prescription. We knew other things. We didn't know that at 35 years old, he's taking too many painkillers. Now, why do I get this personal and share it with you? I'm sorry? You might have somebody in your world that's been through that. Now, what's amazing, and I'm going to give him a lot of credit, how quickly he went from a lifetime of, or for several years of being a victim to, okay, here's where I'm at. I got to get help. So even for years, us not knowing, and by the way, I own it, shame on me for not having a better understanding, and yet life happened. Do you think he's a little embarrassed? I would hope so, but I don't know if he is. Now, thankfully, my youngest brother's a nurse at that hospital. So he got one of those messages too, met him at the hospital. Full disclosure, he was on suicide watch. They didn't know what was going on. How do you think my 6 personal perspectives was yesterday? It was fine. It was totally fine because I knew he was okay. I immediately woke up and was like, what's going on with Houston and me? My grandfather dies the last time I'm here, now this? I gotta either move here or never come again, but I'm here. And the reason I share that story with you is it doesn't matter how long somebody's on that side, they can make a choice to go over there. Does that help? You don't have to be a victim forever. He's gonna make choices, he's gonna get to that side. Unfortunately, some of my programming in my world, the first question was, how are we gonna pay for that? I'm grateful, I have a margin in my life. That's not a problem, we'll be okay. We'll figure it out, I don't care what it costs. We're willing to make that investment in people. Your highest return on investment is gonna be people and real estate. People is indefinite what that return on investment is gonna be. Okay, what'd you take away from this chapter before we move into the models? What's that? People absolutely can change. And I'm gonna put a caveat next to that, when they want to. And when they have a lot of support. Because at 35 and no job, if he didn't have his family, what would he do? It's a real conversation. What would he do? Is it okay that I'm being this just transparent? This is real life. It happens. You get to make choices. To be totally honest, at 3 in the morning, there was a moment of which, oh no, do I have to fly home? That was before I talked to it's the first time in my life I've ever talked to my mom at 3:30 in the morning, sober, since college. Okay. Ahas from the mindset part before we get to the models. And you're thinking, there's no way this guy's ever getting done at 4. Promise we will. We're even gonna have a couple minutes to spare. The models are fast. Mindset's the hard part. Ahas from the models, or from the mindset. Victim to accountable. Yeah. Such a good point. So it was said, if you couldn't hear it, it's a cycle. Sometimes we show up on the victim side and we move over to accountable. How long you choose to stay on that side is totally up to you. I was in a class that somebody gave, and afterwards they went up to the instructor. I happened to overhear this unintentionally. And they said to the instructor, I've got somebody in my world that's a lifetime victim. And the instructor said to her, is there anything you can do to remove that relationship from your time? It's dragging you down. She said, it's my husband. We've been married for 30 years. I don't want to change that. What did she do? She didn't get divorced, by the way. She cared. She found some help. She found strategic options. They were looking for things that happened. The gentleman that I recommended about Sean Acor will share in his story, even though he teaches about happiness and was at Harvard for 12 years, he suffered from depression for 2 years. It can be short-term, it can be long-term. Told you it was going to get deep in this class at times. Does this class kind of feel like the emotional roller coaster a little bit? Okay, it's designed to. Models. Let's jump into it. What are the mission, visions, and values of your business? Anyone have a mission statement that you just know for your sales business? What's Apple's slogan, for lack of better words? What's the slogan from Apple that made them kind of the company they are today? It's 2 words. Changed the entire trajectory of the company Apple. Back in the 80s, they had a billboard, they had advertising for a computer called the Lisa. It was an epic failure. All the advertising was all around all the cool specs it could do and all the cool things it could do, and unless you're a computer dork, you didn't know what that meant. I put my computer nerd hat on for a second. I didn't even know what it meant. I was also 5 in 1985. But when that came out, nobody connected with it. And then they had a brilliant statement that came out of some brilliant person. It was think differently. Goes back to people don't actually care what you do, Simon Sinek said this, as much as they care why you do it. So if you don't have a clear mission, vision, and values for your real estate business, even if you're a single agent, I don't care. If you're part of a team, I don't care either. Come up with it. Why do you exist in real estate? What's the why behind it? Your clients, your database, they will buy far more into the why than the how and what you do. If you take nothing else from this class about your business, please take that. Come up with what is the mission, vision, and value. Set your standards. And by the way, it can change over time. Ours has, as a company, they added in things. They keep adding things to it. That's okay, it grows, and it'll grow with you. All right, so here's the new parts of the new models. You may have seen this from Business Planning Clinic. They've added in some of this they haven't. One of the things I'm gonna show you, Gary drew out on a whiteboard just a couple weeks ago for us, so you're really gonna get some inside knowledge. This is kind of the new model, though, that was leads, listings, and leverage. What's different? Database, service plan, value proposition, and then something pretty big. Give what? Yeah, say that again. $1 million. How big do you have to think to earn, to net, to receive, to give $1 million? Somebody gave me the model yesterday. Said, well, I need to earn at least 10 million to give $1 million. They took the 10% model. I'm judgment free, whatever your model is. But how much would you have to earn in order to give away $1 million a year? All right, I want you to write down how much money you net last year. What was your net income last year? Before Uncle Sam. 2021. How much money did you net last year? Before Uncle Sam. Okay. What would it take for you to give away that amount of money this year? How much differently would you have to think in order to give that amount of money away? Well, by the way, whatever number you wrote down, how much could you do by giving that amount of money away? How much would that fund your mission, whatever your mission is? Something Mo Anderson shared in one of her conversations with us is no margin, no mission. If you don't have a margin in your business, you can't fund your life's mission. If you want another book on happiness and overcoming, read her book, A Joy-Filled Life. How many of you have ever seen Mo Anderson speak? Does it seem like she has life figured out these days? She's got a jet with 2 pilots that flies her around the country so she can teach classes. She's 82, 3-ish. Living a pretty big life. I asked at one point somebody at KWR, I was like, what does Mo drive? Not that that's an indicator of success. Anybody know what Mo drives? She's a Maybach. Yeah. Yeah. She's got a driver. A Maybach, that enormous Mercedes that's 300,000. I don't know. Nimesh, how much is a Maybach? $500,000. Okay. How did she grow up? She made her clothes out of corn sacks. She grew up in the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma. She has a story of overcoming. She also went through bankruptcy later in life. Her house burned down. Her dream house burned down. She became CEO of the company at 57 years old in the 90s. All due respect to every Texan in here. Do you think it was easy to become a female CEO in the 90s in South Texas? Or Central Texas, we'll call it. Austin. What do you define Austin as? Central? Okay, good. I'll be respectful there. Do you? Yeah, California. Yeah, it's not. It is. Orange County. Is it? Do you think that was easy to become CEO at 57 years old, female in Central Texas in the 90s? She had people at KW that went to her and said, "You're the wrong choice. I can't believe Gary hired you. You made a mistake. He made a mistake. You're a joke." All those kind of things. Gary shared with us a couple weeks ago, Mo was a regional director that was the biggest pain in his backside. She thinks totally different than he thinks. She wakes up every day and says, "How do I succeed through people?" Gary Keller wakes up every day and says, "How do I go do things to make things happen?" He sees a hill, he's going to run towards it, take the hill. Mo sees a hill, she goes, "Who do I need to form as a team that's going to go take this hill together?" So as a result, they clash at times. They also create really great things together. So back to this, Mo now gives away an absurd amount of money, and so does Gary, because they think really big, they earn really big, they net, and they give. So it gets smaller along the way, whatever that means to you. Okay. Here are the four models. They haven't changed. They're still the same. ELBO, ELBO, economic, lead gen, budget, organization, ELBO, in that order. Economic model is all about how much money do you want to net? What's your profit goal? A book called Profit First. What was written first, Profit First or MREA? It was MREA. And Gary brought in the author of Profit First to teach his top 100 at one point. Judgment free, because I know some of you are in that group. I saw photos of people in the front of the room in Austin, their arm around Mike, the author of Profit First. And in the background, I see Gary. Why I think that's funny, maybe this is my twisted sense of humor. Mike's a multimillionaire, Gary's a billionaire. Let me go find out what the millionaire has to say when the billionaire's in the background. Gary's so brilliant, he handed the microphone off to somebody else to say the message that he wanted them to hear. So as a sales agent, maybe sometimes you need somebody else to say the message for you. Okay, first model, economic. In order to net $1 million, it's assuming a 40% profit margin. You may have heard this, 30, 30, 40. 40% net profit as a percentage of gross commission before taxes. I am not a CPA. I am not a licensed anything in the state of Texas. So the Republic of Texas. Is that more correct? So you still have to pay your taxes, even in Texas. You just don't have to pay your state taxes, right? State taxes are very expensive everywhere else. All right, so operating expenses 30%, cost of sales 30%, total GCI 2.5 million. What's your average commission, gross commission per unit here in your market center or in your business? What's your average GCI per unit? 8,000? Okay. For some of you it's more, for some of you it's less. That's okay. Put your number in there. So in order to net $1 million, you need to sell 350 units. And you may be looking at a number going, that is ridiculous. I don't want to touch that unit. Well, there's good news on this. You're probably not going to have $750,000 worth of expenses until you get to that point. And even then, that's a big expense number. I don't know what's going on with that TV, but it's cool. So you would also probably aren't going to have $750,000 worth of cost of sales. If your goal is 100,000, if anybody in the room, you're like, my goal is just to net 100 grand, then just take off the zeros. So now you've got 75,000 in expenses, 75,000 in cost of sales, and 250,000 in GCI. So this model is scalable. The only difference, you probably just have a lot of people in your world doing the work at 750,000 in expenses. Am I still talking to the mic? We good? Okay, cool. I don't have a mic that's like blasting out. We're recording some parts of this. We'll see if there's any usable footage by the end. I'm sure they're going to be posted all over Facebook. And welcome to Tim's last day at Keller Williams. All right, numbers on the sales side. So this is assuming a 50-50 model. 50% of your business is sellers, 50% is buyers. The conversion rates are different. In MREA, they are not 75-75. They are for our purposes. So I pushed back because, you know, I like to do that. And I said, well, 75% conversion rate, I took 90% conversion rate. That meant 90% of the sellers I met with, I took their listing. And a great coach said to me, one of two things is true. Either number one, you're taking overpriced crap. His words. Or number two, you don't go to enough listing appointments. Was he right? I didn't go to enough listing appointments. I didn't take overpriced listings, but I didn't go to enough listing appointments. And I also didn't say no enough. I said yes to crazy far too many times. If you had more leads, how many people in your database right now would you fire?
All the victims.
Crazy people. Yeah, that's the crazy. I mean, the couple that I met with that told me that they needed to move out of the neighborhood because their house was haunted. Judgment free around your beliefs around that. I don't care. But that was just the start of our conversation. That was as they opened the door. It only got crazier from there. It only got really bizarre. You don't understand. People are going to come at our house at any time. It's a dangerous neighborhood. Like, I'm your neighbor. No, it's not. Like, that should have been a red flag from the Meadows. That was their last name. I remember. It stuck in my head. Chad and Natalie. They were clients I should have fired before I ever hired. I should not have let me, but I didn't have enough leads, so I said yes. All right. Buy side, same number, 75-75. That means 75% of the buyers that you meet with are going to choose to work with you, and of that, 75% are actually going to close on a home. Is that realistic in today's market? These averages will show up over time. Over time, you're going to see these numbers. Based on these numbers, you or someone from your organization needs to go on 6.5 appointments per week for buyers and 6.5 appointments per week with a new seller, new buyer, new seller. 13 appointments per week in total for your team to net $1 million. 2 appointments a day. 3 appointments a day if you want to work 5 days a week. Is that doable? If I said you have $750,000 to go hire really talented people to do all the stuff that you mess up, all you have to do every day is go meet with 3 new clients, buyers and sellers, is that doable? Suddenly, it doesn't seem like that much. But why most of us don't do it is we don't believe in ourselves enough that we can do that. And then you meet really top producers that are doing it, and you become immediately unimpressed. I'm telling you, I've been unimpressed by a lot of people outside of this room. I've been highly impressed inside of this room. Outside of this room, I met with some top producers. I'm like, wait, that's that person? That's the person that nets that much money a year? What are they special at? You know what they're really good at? Hiring people. Really good at that. They've mastered hiring people. All right, second model. Before we get there, what's the purpose of a goal? Right underneath it's the answer. I made this real easy. It's to inform your action plan. It's to help you become intentional in the moment so you know actually what I need to do. All right, 2 M's of lead gen. This is a lead gen model. There is message and method. The message is all about matching your market and making an offer. You've heard this likely if you've seen Jason Abrams speak recently. He calls it MOFERS, making an offer for immediate response. Making an offer for an immediate response. Call me now to find out how much your home's worth in today's market. Call me now to find out how much your home's worth before interest rates hit X%. Dale, I'm looking in your direction. 6%, we're going to see it this year, right? Yep. Not to put you in the spot. And kind of made you agree with me. That's poor form. And you brought wine. That'll help. All right. Questions about this? You know your target audience, your market conditions, direct or indirect. So I had the privilege to coach an agent. He closes 95 units a year, single agent with an admin. His average sale price is $550,000. How's his net income? Oh, he's rocking it. He works a great amount of hours. He's cool with what he does. Here's his lead gen strategy. He knocks on doors. He has a billboard, which is more marketing, in the little borough that he services. It's a small little area. He has events, which he hosts open house and does other things in the area, and then he makes phone calls. He said all the time, he's the #1 agent, single agent in that market center in profitability and units. Crushes it. Small market center, but he crushes it. Lives a really big life. I think he just turned 40. Young kids, just turned 40, great life, lives in the same area. He's essentially the mayor of his town. He's dominated, he's been in the business for 7 years and able to build this tremendous, highly profitable business. And I said, all right, his name's Mike. Mike, what do you do? Or what do you do when people say, I want to do what you do? And he said, it's simple. I say, come with me tomorrow. I'm going to go knock on doors. They go with him. They knock on doors. He said most of the time they last half a day. Sometimes they'll last 1 day and I never see him again. He shares with everybody in his marketplace his exact plan. He knocks on doors. He talks to people on the phone. He sends out postcards sometimes. He's got a billboard that he's sponsored with somebody, so he went with it anyway. And that's essentially his plan. And some networking events. He just sees a lot of people on a regular basis. So I said, all right, great. You sold 54 listings last year. How many of them came from door knocking only? And he said 1. The other 53 came from all 4 sources, meaning that they got all 4 touches before they chose to list with me. He knocked on their door. He sent them a postcard. He called them. They were at events. They saw all that stuff kind of pulled together. That was his method and message. So his homework on our very first call was, all right, I want you to look at every home that you sold last year. You represented 54 sellers. I want you to go knock on those 54 doors. He said, but they weren't my clients. I represented sellers. I said, great, and here's going to be your script. Is, hey, I'm Mike. You may remember me from when you bought your house a couple months ago. I just wanted to let you know our values today in this neighborhood are now up 20%. Which one of your neighbors do you think would sell next? Is that hard? That script, I'm sorry, that conversation starter, we're recording this, that conversation starter. Is that, now, he's allowed to knock on doors in his borough. Again, he can do that. But do you think that's a hard conversation to have? How many of those 54 agents, I'm sorry, 54 sellers have ever heard from their agent? None. They might have gotten a closing gift. They might have gotten something else. So he pushed back a little bit. He goes, well, there's some of them I don't want to do that because they're agents in my office, or I have like, I said, great. How many are left? 30, 25, whatever that number is, go knock on their doors. No surprise, he saw his listings tick up. There were so many homeowners that said, you know, it's funny you should knock on my door. We loved the house. It was competitive when we bought this. We probably paid more than we wanted to. I used to work from home. Now I'm actually going back to the office. We would sell it if we could make a profit. And at 20%, we can make a profit and still go buy our next house. Because his biggest problem in the market is what? Yeah, so go get it. It's there. Just go talk to the people that own it. Okay. Always gets a little weird when I say that. It's okay. I'm a little weird. All right, and then the method, prospecting and marketing, prepping, action, and maintaining. Here is another model that's a little different than MREA, and it's this idea that there's a crossover between past clients and allied resources. You'll notice that the haven't mets is slightly smaller than it used to be. I don't care about the 6.8 billion people that are outside of the haven't mets that aren't my target. I care about the couple hundred or thousand that are haven't mets that I need to know. How many of your neighbors do you not know? The little neighborhood my wife and I bought in 3 years ago that was our forever house and is our forever house, I hope, there are 7 homes. In the 3 years we've been there, the last 2 years, it's gone up 40% in value in the last 2 years, which makes you feel like a genius, and it's dumb luck. I did nothing for that 40%. The market went up. 1 of the 7 homes sold at the very beginning of the pandemic when it was prime, you can't see human beings in Pennsylvania. You're going to get the zombie apocalypse, or I don't know what's going to happen if I saw somebody. I can even like go through windows to see people at that point. And again, a lot of people, terrible, get it. There's that side too. I'm not being disrespectful to any of that. My neighbor listed and sold their house in 7 days. They didn't list with me. They listed with an agent that's an hour away at a company that has 0 market percentage. Why didn't they list with me? They didn't know I was a real estate agent. Now, I wouldn't have listed their home, to be totally honest. I would have referred it to somebody, likely. But I didn't even have a conversation about a conversation. I knew them. I saw them at the bus stop all the time. They had my phone number. I had theirs. We saw their kid every day. They had a beautiful house. They just put a $150,000 pool in the year before. I didn't even know you could spend that much on a pool. But in Pennsylvania, you only get to use it like 4 months a year. They were planning on being there forever until they weren't. Something changed. They moved to Atlanta. So not only did I not get their sale, and by the way, they sold for $1 million. So I missed that $30,000 check. Oh, and then they bought in Atlanta. Do you think they bought bigger or smaller? I would imagine bigger. He took a job to relocate his family from Pennsylvania, where his mom lived. They were really happy. Just spent 150 grand on a pool and moved to Atlanta. Probably went up in price. I missed that referral too. So by not telling somebody that actually should have been one of my targets, by not communicating, I lost out. And I'm saying this, you can't really lose what you don't have, but I'm going to say it anyway. I lost out on, I don't know, 20 grand. Would 20 grand have helped in that pandemic beginning when I thought that coaching was going to be done forever and real estate was upside down? Would help my mindset. Okay. New touch campaigns. 19 to connect, 36 to convert. Biggest difference here, events. We've got some events. All right, budget model. I know you couldn't wait till we got to budget. Everyone said, I can't wait till the last 10 minutes of class when we get to budget before we get to organizational. So I just want to show you the percentages. We kind of already touched on this. Your total cost of sales shouldn't exceed 30%. Cost of sales, just as a quick reminder, they only get paid when a transaction happens. Those are commissions that are getting paid out. Those are referral fees that are getting paid out. They're your cap getting paid out. Any other expenses you have that are associated with the actual sale itself. Expenses represent another 30%. Once again, there is no miscellaneous. I'm not a CPA, and yet my CPA doesn't like me to have miscellaneous. He said, find a category and fit it in there. If it doesn't fit in one of these categories, the question he asked me is that actually a business expense? If I can't defend it to my own CPA, how could I defend it to the IRS? Okay, always gets weird when you say IRS too. They're not here, are they? Okay. All right, organizational model, last one. And then we're gonna put a bow on this thing. Told you the model part was easy once you get the mindset. So talent versus non-talent for the role that I'm hiring. This is straight from career visioning. If you're gonna hire anybody in your organization, or you're gonna build a team this year that requires you to, or you build a business that requires you to build a team, then take a look at this chart, take a picture of it, and go take career visioning. Here's the new model. Here are the 7th levels. Level 1 is you. Congratulations. Level 1A. Gary wrote this out for us just a couple weeks ago. It's you plus a coach, or you plus a mentor. Gary said the first hire that made a big difference for his life was hiring a coach or hiring a mentor and being in that partnership. So what I want you to assume is on every other level, you and a coach are partnered in this. I didn't put it on every level because it got really big. But every other level after level 1A, you've got a coach by your side of some sort. Level 2 and 3 look exactly the same as MREA, except for you've got a coach. Level 4, I'm going to separate out, and now I've got my showing assistant and my OSA, ISA, or my dialing for dollar department. I've got my call center, perhaps. I've got somebody that's making calls. I'm told that in Texas, the showing assistant needs to be licensed. So it is a licensed showing assistant. Part 2, I now have a buyer's agent, a lead buyer's agent that works with showing agents. I'll slide out of your photos so my head's not in the way. Then I have my lead manager that's managing my sales business or my lead business. Part 1 of level 5, I have a leads manager with my ISA, OSA separated out. I've got my director of ops with my transaction coordinator, listing manager, lead buyer's agent, showing an assistant. What am I doing? Yeah, I'm conducting the orchestra. I heard it as well. For what? Listings. I'm still running the listing business at that part, and I'm also going appointments for talent because I'm the orchestra director that's making sure that I've got a talent flow coming into my organization. Is it hard to hire talent right now? always hard to hire talent. Yet you all have databases of people that you know. You sold them houses or you sold their house. Who in your database would be a great person to be in your organization? One of the best salespeople I ever hired as a brand new agent sold me a car. I bought a car that year because we were expecting our second child at that point, and it was before bonus baby number 3, and I needed a car. And I went into the dealership, and this gentleman sold 30 cars a month when the average person in the dealership sold 7. Like, so what do? We're on the test drive, we're talking together, and he said, I sell 30 homes a month, and I have a young family, and I reached my maximum earning potential at this company. He maxed out at $200,000 a year. That's the most you could possibly make in the dealership he worked for. And that's not an insignificant amount of money. And yet 30 cars a month, this kid could sell anything. So he did. He got into real estate. Guess how he sold 30 cars a month? Prospecting. He had a database. He lived page 188 of MREA. He had a database, he fed it information, he systematically communicated with it, and whenever somebody wanted to buy an Audi, he sold it to them. That's like, he ran a business inside of an organization already. Perfect real estate agent, made total sense. He sold real estate for a little while, he got bored of it. He actually got bored of selling real estate. He realized he didn't like houses or people. It's a problem in our business. If you don't like houses or people, either you got to build a business that has people to manage houses or people, or you got to go do something else. He went and built another business, wildly successful. Took those same strategies. All right, level 5, part 2, listing agent. I've seen this drawn 2 different ways, so I'm going to put a correction to it. That listing agent might report to the lead buyer's agent. They might report directly to you. The listing agent might report to you, and the buyer's agent might report to them. I don't care who reports to each other. Just knowing that my span of control as a leader is not going to be more than 4 or 5. Once I get more than 4 or 5, I start to lose span of control. I can't possibly pour into this person enough and keep them accountable to their goals. Level 6, part 1. Now I've got a director of sales that's worried about that insulation. Look how many layers I am away from clients. I'm loving life now. I'm just worried about directing people and building businesses. Level 6, part 2, my OSA has a whole department now, meaning they added a second or third or fifth person. I now have a director of expansion, building out other businesses. Could be expansion teams, could be other businesses. But I'm pretty well insulated. I still got my 4 people. And then ultimately level 7, which Gary said to us more than once in the last couple of years, if this level truly existed, I wouldn't be here. And yet we do have teams that have very much achieved this. Yet this does not mean I spend all day on the beach. It means I spend time evaluating my CEO and my business to see if it's moving forward or not. All right, put a bow on this thing, and we're going to wrap up almost exactly on time. That QR code. I always get this question. Do you have a card? No, I don't have business cards. I haven't had them in a long time. If you want my contact info, QR code, pull out your camera. There's a lead capture form. It's command. I'm honest. It takes you to a command form. It automatically puts you into my database, and you get my contact information. So if you want my contact information, it's there. Before we wrap up, 3 ahas from the entirety of what we covered today. Pretty simple. You should have led with that. We'd have saved us 3 hours. Set a goal, build a timeline, and actually do the work. 2 more. The whole class was really mindset. I mean, how much of the models, how long do we spend on models versus mindset? Even less, to be totally honest. But about 1/3 was about the actual models. Because if you don't have the mindset figured out, the models don't matter as much. All right, one more aha. I got nowhere to go. Yeah, Dale. Yeah, when you think it's all the way, your max effort, somebody pushing you a little bit, you can get a little bit more out of it. Is that working, the QR code? All right, cool. All right, was this helpful today? Thank you guys for hanging out. I know it's a lot. I appreciate you. My pleasure. Enjoy some wine, cheese on behalf of Dale.
Yeah, let me close it out.
Yeah, I'll let you wrap it up. Cool.
All right.
And I'm going to go jump on a call in a
I
minute.
know I work with each and every one of you in some form or fashion, and now you know that sometimes I do sound smart, and it's the reason why. So again, Tim, appreciate you
My
coming
pleasure.
out, and appreciate you the things you do for me. Again, thank you guys, and Dale. I know I mentioned Keller Mortgage last week, and so Dale has been giving me a lot of crap. But again, him and AmCap are a major partner of ours, and we couldn't do a lot of the things we do because, unless it was a partnership with them. So appreciate it again, Dale, for having us and providing the great stuff. Awesome. Anything to add, Dale? Awesome, guys. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.